The focus shifts to a tight close-up of her ear and temple, where the physical heat of her arousal is most visible. Her skin is stained with a deep, radiant pink, and the fine lines of the illustration depict the rushing blood and the heat she feels. Her long, dark hair cascades around her face, framing the elegant pearl and gold floral earring that dangles as she moves. This panel captures the internal sensory overload, the sound of her own heartbeat thumping in her ears. The camera zooms in on the physical contact, emphasizing the raw power of the interaction. His pale hand wraps tightly around her thigh, the fingers pressing into her skin with a firm, possessive grab. The contrast between his strong, steady hand and the softness of her skin highlights the dominance of his movement. The fabric of his dark trousers and the sharp lines of the artwork underscore the suddenness and the intensity of this physical claim. The atmosphere in the room thickens with a heavy, palpable tension. The man, dressed in a crisp white shirt with the top buttons undone, leans forward with a look of intense, focused desire. His dark hair falls slightly over his brow, shadowing eyes that are fixed intently on the woman before him. There is a slight flush across his cheekbones, betraying the heat of the moment. One of his hands firmly grips her leg, pulling her closer into his personal space, signaling a moment where words are no longer necessary and actions take over. The perspective returns to the man, focusing on the lower half of his face as he hovers inches away. Beads of sweat trail down his neck, reflecting the physical exertion of his self-control. His jaw is set, and his mouth is slightly open as he draws in a sharp, ragged breath. The proximity is electric. He is so close that his breath likely brushes against her skin. The focus on his lips and the tension in his neck emphasizes the primal, intoxicating nature of the desire he is struggling to contain. Overwhelmed by the sudden contact, the woman lies back, her body reacting instinctively to his touch. A twitch ripples through her as her heart races. Her hand reflexively clutches the fabric of her dress at her chest, a gesture of both vulnerability and rising excitement. A soft blush creeps up her neck to her face, and her lips part slightly as a quiet gasp escapes her. She is caught in a whirlwind of emotion, her body trembling under the weight of his gaze and his touch. The scene begins with a moment of high tension and uncertainty. A hand tightly clenches the white fabric of a bedsheet, the knuckles straining with the force of the grip. A faint pink blush creeps across the skin, and a small bead of sweat suggests a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Above, a shaky speech bubble escapes. "Wait!" It is a plea for a momentary pause, capturing the sudden rush of overwhelming emotion. The perspective shifts to the dark-haired man, his head bowed as he moves closer. He appears focused, his presence heavy and deliberate. The other person, caught off guard by his sudden proximity and the intensity of the atmosphere, stammers out a confused question. "What are you doing?" The air is thick with the unspoken as the boundaries between them begin to blur. As he leans in further, the man's features are revealed in sharp detail. His dark, neatly styled hair falls slightly over his brow, which is damp with perspiration. His eyes are narrowed, filled with a deep, smoldering intensity as he looks up from his position. He holds a leg firmly but carefully, his touch grounding them both in the reality of the moment. The flush on his cheeks mirrors the heat of the room. The focus tightens into a dramatic close-up of his eye. The iris is a cool, dark violet, shimmering with a predatory yet focused resolve. The slight redness around his eyelids and the blush on his skin emphasize his state of arousal and determination. In response to the earlier hesitation, he utters a short, breathless promise that carries a weight of its own. "You'll see." It is an answer that offers no escape, only a deepening of the encounter. Finally, the tension breaks into action. The man dives forward, his head disappearing into the fold of the moment as he follows through on his intent. The sound effect, rustle, vibrates across the panel, signifying the movement of fabric and bodies. His hand remains a steady anchor, fingers splayed against skin, as he fully commits to the intimacy of the act, leaving words behind for the sensation of the present. As the intensity of the moment escalates, the woman is visibly startled by the sheer novelty of the sensation. Her eyes go wide with realization, and she instinctively brings both hands to her face, muffling a gasp as a deep crimson blush spreads across her cheeks. Her long, wavy hair fans out across the pillow, framing a face caught in the throes of a sudden, overwhelming physical awakening. Body trembling, she let out a weak, breathy plea. "Stop!" Despite her verbal protests, her body betrayed her as it began to twitch uncontrollably against the sheets. The fabric of her dress bunched and wrinkled under the strain of her shifting movements, illustrating the internal conflict between her startled mind and her reacting body. In contrast to her chaotic reaction, the man remained deeply immersed in the act. A close-up of his face shows his brow furrowed with concentration and a light sheen of sweat. His eyes were half-lidded and heavy with desire, yet there was a gentleness in his expression as he witnessed her reaction. The flush on his own face mirrored hers, showing that he was just as affected by the intimacy as she was. The sensation reached a fever pitch, causing her to flinch as her legs stiffened and her toes curled against the bed. Her mind raced to make sense of the pleasure that was flooding her system, leading to a dazed internal monologue. "I've never felt like this before." The physical contact between his dark-trousered legs and her bare skin created a sharp visual contrast, highlighting the vulnerability of her position. Finally, as the waves of feeling continued to wash over her, her toes remained tightly gripped, the skin flushed a deep pink from the rush of blood. The sheer intensity of the experience left her in a state of shock, her thoughts trailing off into a whisper of pure disbelief. How can this be? The world outside the room had ceased to exist, leaving only the profound and terrifyingly beautiful discovery of a sensation she never knew existed. She lies back against the pillows, her long, wavy auburn hair fanning out around her. Her face is flushed with a deep crimson blush that reaches her ears, and small beads of sweat glisten on her skin. Her eyes are misty, reflecting a mix of exhaustion and intense sensation. With a heavy huff of breath, she trembles and manages to whisper a desperate request. "Please, just stop now." The camera shifts to a close-up of her torso, draped in a delicate, light-colored fabric that clings to her form. The atmosphere is charged with a shimmering, ethereal glow. The internal pressure she feels is becoming unbearable, manifesting as a thought that screams louder than any words spoken aloud. "I feel like my body's going to explode." It is a moment of pure sensory overload. The tension reaches its peak as the proximity between them closes. Every small movement feels magnified in the quiet room. The speaker leans in further, their presence overwhelming her senses. With a final, lingering note of doubt and curiosity, the question is repeated, softer this time, hanging in the air like a dare. "Really?" A hand reaches out, the touch described as gentle as it grazes the fabric of her attire. The movements are slow, deliberate, and teasingly soft. A voice cuts through her haze, low and questioning, challenging her earlier plea. The speaker isn't convinced by her words, asking with a hint of playful provocation, "Do you really want me to stop?" The air in the room feels thick with an unspoken electricity. The woman, her face partially obscured, clenches her hand tightly against her chest, her knuckles turning white. The sound of a sharp clinch echoes her internal struggle. She is overwhelmed, her breathing shallow as she utters a faint, uncertain, caught between the surge of her emotions and the reality of the moment. A cold, knowing smirk plays across the man's lips as he looks down at her. He is undeterred by her pleas, his expression radiating a sense of absolute control. Beads of perspiration roll down his neck, yet his composure remains unshaken. He watches her struggle with a predatory gaze, clearly enjoying the effect he has on her. With a sudden, decisive motion, his hand reaches for his collar. A sharp pop echoes through the room as a button is forced open, signaling the end of his restraint. As he begins to loosen his attire, he reminds her of his nature with a low, chilling declaration. A prosecutor. The unyielding nature. He rises over her, his presence looming larger and more intimidating than before. His eyes are fixed on hers, dark and intense. He lets out a heavy ha of breath, his face flushed with the same heat that has consumed the room. He continues his sentence, his voice dripping with authority. Never take someone at their word. He sheds his shirt completely, revealing a powerful, well-defined physique. Every muscle is taut and primed for action, a physical manifestation of his refusal to back down. The white fabric of his shirt hangs loosely from his hands as he prepares to move forward, leaving no room for further negotiation or escape. The demand for evidence. The woman can only watch, breathless and wide-eyed, letting out a soft "ha" as she sinks further into the pillows. Her face is a mask of heat and submission. The man's final words hang over her like a sentence passed in court, cold and immutable. They only believe in the evidence. To him, her words of protest mean nothing compared to the physical reaction he sees before him. The woman lies back against the soft pillows, her long, wavy mahogany hair spreading out around her like a silken fan. A deep, feverish flush has taken over her cheeks, and her eyes are heavy, glazed with a mixture of exhaustion and overwhelming emotion. She clutches her hand tightly against her chest, her knuckles pale as she tries to steady the frantic rhythm of her heart. Beads of cold sweat roll down her neck, and her lips are parted slightly, struggling to find a steady breath in the heat of the moment. The air in the room feels thick and heavy. A sharp, audible huff escapes her as her body trembles from the exertion. In the midst of her clouded senses, a moment of sudden clarity strikes her like a bolt of lightning. The internal chaos settles into a singular, jarring thought as she murmurs to herself in a jagged breath, "Oh, I see." The realization is both startling and inevitable, anchoring her back to a reality she wasn't prepared to face. Driven by an instinct she can no longer suppress, she lifts her hand toward the dim light of the city skyline visible through the window. Her fingers are slender and pale, trembling slightly as they stretch upward, silhouetted against the purple hue of the night. The word reach hangs in the air, echoing her desperate physical and emotional longing. She is grasping for something or someone just out of her current touch, her hand a symbol of a silent plea for connection in the quiet room. The world around her seems to tunnel vision, everything fading into a white void except for the racing thoughts in her mind. Within a jagged, vibrating speech bubble that mirrors her unstable heartbeat, a single word lingers, unfinished. I. It is a confession caught in her throat, a truth so heavy that she cannot yet find the strength to voice it completely. The silence that follows is deafening, filled with the weight of everything left unsaid. The man hovers close, his face partially shielded by the shadow of his dark tousled hair. His expression is a masterclass in restrained emotion. His eyes are downcast, yet they burn with a quiet, simmering intensity that matches the flush spreading across his own features. Every breath he takes is deliberate, heavy with the weight of the moment, as he looks down at her with a mixture of profound tenderness and undeniable hunger. The city lights outside create a soft bokeh glow behind him, isolating the two of them in a world where nothing else exists but this shared electric proximity. The internal struggle finally reaches its breaking point, giving way to a powerful, singular clarity. Within a large, jagged speech bubble that pulses with the same frantic energy as her heart, her truest desire is finally laid bare. I want this man too. No longer a half-formed thought or a hesitant I. This is a definitive surrender to her own feelings. The dark atmospheric background of the room emphasizes the gravity of this mental vow, marking the moment her resistance completely dissolves into a yearning that matches his own. All hesitation vanishes as they are drawn together like two celestial bodies in an inescapable orbit. The man leans over her, his powerful frame casting a shadow across her smaller form as she lies beneath him, her long hair spilling across the sheets. Her hands, which were once clutching her own chest in uncertainty, now reach up to grasp his shoulders, pulling him closer as their gazes lock in a moment of absolute mutual recognition. The tension in the room is palpable, a silent conversation of touch and breath that confirms their shared desire, transforming the quiet night into a scene of intense, intimate connection. The scene opens with a moment of quiet anticipation. A hand, delicate yet trembling with uncertainty, reaches upward against a backdrop of the shimmering city lights visible through a window. The movement is slow and deliberate, capturing the heavy tension in the air. It is a gesture of longing, a bridge being built across the small but profound distance between two people. As the hand remains suspended, the internal struggle becomes more evident. A speech bubble appears with a simple, trailing I, signaling a confession that is caught in the throat. The city's soft, purple-hued glow reflects the vulnerability of the moment, where words feel inadequate to describe the depth of the emotion being felt. The focus shifts to the man's face, captured in a tight, intimate close-up. He lets out a soft, weary sigh, his eyes half-lidded and filled with a mixture of restraint and intense longing. A faint blush creeps across his cheeks, betraying the composure he tries so hard to maintain. The sigh carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts, echoing through the stillness of the room. The narrative tension peaks as the woman's inner monologue finally breaks through the silence. Set against the atmospheric light of the high-rise apartment, a jagged, spiked thought bubble declares her definitive truth. I want this man too. It is the moment of no return, the realization that the attraction is mutual, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore any longer. The sequence culminates in a powerful, full-body shot. All hesitation has vanished as the man leans over her, his muscular frame silhouetted against the elegant room. The woman reaches up, her hands gripping his shoulders, pulling him closer as they hover on the verge of a kiss. The air is electric, the background sparkles with a soft bokeh effect, and the world outside the window disappears, leaving only the two of them in their shared, heated moment. The heavy, purple atmosphere of the night gives way to the soft, ethereal light of morning. Sunlight filters through the large windows, casting a gentle, hazy glow across the room. The city outside is now bathed in the pale blues and warm yellows of a rising sun, signaling a transition from the intense, shared secrets of the dark to the undeniable reality of the day. In the quiet of the morning, the woman begins to stir. Her eyes flutter open slowly as she lets out a soft, hazy, She remains lying down, her long, wavy hair sprawling across the white pillows. There is a peaceful, almost dazed expression on her face, as if she is still caught between the memory of the night and the consciousness of the present. As clarity returns, her internal thoughts begin to process the magnitude of what has occurred. Two simple speech bubbles appear against a stark white background. Ah, followed by the heavy realization, Yanhyuk and I. The sentence trails off, hanging in the air as she grapples with the shift in their relationship and the fact that there is no going back to how things were before. She looks over to find Yanhyuk already awake and present. He is shown shirtless, his powerful and athletic physique fully visible in the morning light. Unlike the softness of the previous night, his expression is now one of intense focus and perhaps a touch of solemnity. His brow is slightly furrowed as he gazes downward, his silent presence filling the room with a renewed sense of gravity. The full weight of the situation finally hits her, causing a physical jolt of surprise. A deep blush spreads across her face and shoulders as she realizes her vulnerability. She quickly clutches the white sheets to her chest, pulling them up to cover herself as she looks away in a mixture of embarrassment and shock. A speech bubble containing only an exclamation perfectly captures her speechless state as the reality of the morning settles in. The golden light of morning filters through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a luxurious suite, casting a soft glow over the room. A young woman with long, wavy mahogany hair sits up in bed, clutching the white sheets to her chest. Her expression is a mix of uncertainty and subtle longing as she glances toward the empty side of the room. A thought bubble escapes her mind. Did he leave already? The silence of the room feels heavy, punctuated only by the sight of an unfinished bottle on the table in the background. Just as the silence becomes unbearable, a sharp creak breaks the stillness. The camera zooms in on the doorway, where a tall, broad-shouldered man is entering the room. He is dressed in a crisp white button-down shirt, partially unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a glimpse of his chest. His expression is unreadable, hidden in the shadows as he steps back into the private space they shared. The perspective shifts to show both characters. The woman turns her head sharply toward the door, her cheeks flushing a light pink as she sees him standing there. The man pauses in the doorway, caught in the middle of adjusting his clothes. A small, startled "ah" escapes her lips, the tension between them palpable in the elegant, dimly lit hallway. The man steps fully into the light, his dark, neatly styled hair framing a face that is both stern and handsome. He looks directly at her, his deep blue eyes cool but attentive. Observing her startled state, he speaks with a calm, steady voice that fills the room. "You're awake." There is an air of composed authority about him that contrasts with her visible nervousness. The scene focuses on the man's hands as he meticulously buttons his shirt. Every movement is slow and deliberate, highlighting his slender fingers and the expensive fabric of his attire. As he finishes dressing, the atmosphere suggests a transition from the intimacy of the night before back to the cold, professional reality of the day ahead. The scene opens with a high-angle view of a spacious, modern bedroom. A woman with long, flowing, reddish-brown hair sits up in a large bed, clutching a white duvet to her chest. She looks toward the corner of the room, surprised to find her companion already awake. In a speech bubble above her, she acknowledges the situation with a simple, "Yes, you're up early." The room is bathed in the soft, diffused light of early morning, reflecting off the polished marble accents and the clean lines of the minimalist furniture. The perspective shifts to follow the man, seen from behind as he walks away from the bed. He is already fully dressed in a crisp, light-colored button-down shirt and dark trousers, his posture upright and composed. The sound of his steady footsteps is punctuated by a bold clomp sound effect as he traverses the elegant herringbone-patterned wooden floor. Over his shoulder, he responds calmly to the woman. Yes, as you can see. The camera moves in for a closer shot of the woman, who remains in bed, her expression a mix of grogginess and curiosity. The man's arm and torso are partially visible in the foreground, creating a sense of intimacy between them. Large speech bubbles dominate the top of the frame as he explains his reasoning. I thought about waking you, but I figured it'd be better to let you sleep a bit longer, so I got ready while you were sleeping. Focusing on the man's hands, we see him reaching down toward a bedside table to pick up his wristwatch. He is adjusting his sleeve, the silver cufflink catching the light. Meanwhile, the woman's voice continues from off-screen, expressing a hint of concern about their schedule. She says, "You could have just woken me. I hope I didn't make us late for checkout." In the background, a bottle of liquor and a glass sit on a distant table, suggesting the remains of the previous evening. The final scene is a close-up of the man's hand as he lifts the watch with a quick whip motion to check the time. The watch face is simple and elegant, matching his sophisticated attire. He offers a final word of reassurance to ease her worries, his voice steady and kind. It's fine. It's still early. The warm glow of the morning sun spills across the table, signaling the start of a calm, unhurried day. The camera lingers on the man's hand as he finishes checking his watch. He pauses for a beat, his fingers still wrapped around the leather strap, as if choosing his next words carefully. A small, contemplative speech bubble appears at the bottom of the frame, simply stating, "and..." This brief hesitation heightens the tension in the room, drawing focus to the unspoken thoughts passing between the two. The man looks back toward the bed with a soft, knowing expression. A gentle smile is etched onto his face as he delivers a line that carries a weight of intimacy. Above him, a large speech bubble contains his playful yet pointed words. "Consider it a little thank you for letting me push you so hard yesterday." His dark, neatly styled hair and calm eyes suggest a man who is entirely comfortable with the suggestive nature of his comment. The perspective shifts to a medium shot of the man's torso, emphasizing his physical presence. He is busy with the final touches of his morning routine, adjusting the cuff of his white shirt while the light catches the metallic rim of his watch. His posture remains relaxed and confident, a slight smirk still visible as he moves with purpose through the room, seemingly unfazed by the provocative statement he just made. The focus snaps back to the woman, capturing her immediate and visceral reaction to his words. A large, stylized blush sound effect sweeps across the top of the frame as her face turns a deep, burning crimson. Her wide eyes and slightly parted lips betray her shock and embarrassment, her gaze fixed off-camera as she processes the bluntness of his "thank you." A single bead of sweat on her cheek emphasizes her flustered state. In the final scene, the woman is shown from the chest up, still clutching the white sheet tightly against her bare shoulders. Her long, wavy hair cascades down her back, and her face remains heavily flushed with a mix of shyness and agitation. She stays rooted in place, her knuckles white from gripping the fabric, unable to find a retort to his bold remark. The soft morning light continues to play across her skin, contrasting with the intense heat of the blush spreading across her cheeks. Standing by the bed, the man checks his wristwatch with a calm, composed demeanor. He looks down at the woman, his voice softening as he notices her wakefulness at such an early hour. "It's only 6 o'clock, he remarks, his gaze steady. He offers a considerate suggestion, perhaps hoping she might find more rest. "Why don't you get some more sleep?" Despite his suggestion, the woman remains sitting up, her hands tightly gripping the white duvet as if it were a shield. She looks away, her face flushed with a lingering pink hue, and declines his offer with a quiet but firm resolve. "No, I'll get ready too, since I'm already up," she replies, determined to face the day alongside him rather than retreating back into sleep. Upon hearing her decision, the man does not argue. Instead, he closes his eyes briefly, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He accepts her choice with a polite and graceful acknowledgement, murmuring, "As you wish." His expression suggests a hidden warmth, or perhaps a quiet satisfaction at her persistence. A long, lingering moment follows as the two stay in the room together. The man stands tall near the open closet, his hands in his pockets, while the woman remains perched on the large bed, enveloped in the sheets. The vastness of the luxury suite seems to amplify the stillness between them. A floating text caption hangs in the air, perfectly capturing the thick, palpable tension. Awkward. The silence finally becomes too much for her to bear. The woman looks toward him, her eyes searching his back as he stands a few feet away. She opens her mouth to speak, but the words seem to catch in her throat, leaving her with only a hesitant, trailing murmur. The uncertainty of their situation remains unresolved in the quiet morning light. The atmosphere is heavy with a sudden, silent tension. A man, dressed in a crisp white formal shirt, stands with his back to us, his posture frozen in a moment of hesitation. In front of him, a woman is partially visible, draped in white fabric that catches the light. A single large speech bubble containing only a question mark hangs in the air, capturing the man's quiet confusion as he tries to process the situation unfolding before him. The focus shifts to the woman, her long, wavy auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She looks away, her face flushed with a soft pink blush of embarrassment. Her hand tightly grips the white sheet against her chest, a protective gesture of modesty. She speaks her thoughts aloud, the speech bubble reading, "I think I should get dressed first." The vulnerability in her voice is palpable as she seeks to reclaim her composure. The man begins to react. A small, stylized chibi version of his head appears in the corner, sporting a wide-eyed, slightly stunned expression. He utters a simple, soft "ah" as the realization finally clicks. The frame focuses on the woman's slender arm and the shimmering light reflecting off the fabric, emphasizing the delicate and somewhat awkward intimacy of the encounter. Understanding the need for privacy and decorum, the man turns away. We see his tall, slender frame from the waist down as he walks across the room. His hand is clenched into a firm fist at his side, perhaps a sign of his own inner fluster, or a determined effort to remain a gentleman. He moves across the patterned wooden floor and onto a soft, plush rug, heading toward a specific destination. Finally, the man reaches a woven basket. With a decisive grab, his hand reaches down to pick up a folded pile of clothing. The sunlight streams into the room, highlighting the textures of the fabric and a nearby vase of flowers. By retrieving her clothes for her, he silently acknowledges her request, moving to resolve the awkwardness and provide her with the comfort she needs. Having retrieved the clothing, the man returns to the woman's side. He leans over the bed with a respectful distance, his shadow casting a soft silhouette over the white sheets. The woman sits huddled, still clutching the fabric to her chest, her gaze fixed downward as she feels his close proximity. The air between them is thick with a quiet, polite tension as he prepares to hand over her things. As he moves, the soft rustle of his shirt and the movement of the sheets fill the silence. The camera zooms in on the woman's face, revealing her wide, trembling eyes and a deep, unmistakable blush spreading across her cheeks. She murmurs a faint, bashful, "Excuse me," her voice barely a whisper as she remains overwhelmed by the intimacy of the moment. The man extends his arm, carefully offering the bundle of folded clothes to her. His other hand rests steadily on the bed for support, keeping his posture composed even as he stays close enough to reach her. She remains tucked behind the white sheet, a delicate figure waiting to accept the items that will allow her to regain her privacy. As she takes the clothes, the man begins to pull away. His hand lingers for a split second on the edge of the white bedding, his fingers light against the fabric as he starts to stand up. A curved motion line indicates his graceful retreat, showing his intent to give her the space she requested. With a final, gentlemanly gesture, he ensures she feels completely at ease. While his hand still brushes the edge of the sheet, he speaks with a calm and reassuring tone. His final words in the scene are, "Take your time. I'll head out first," providing her the ultimate courtesy of privacy as he prepares to leave the room. The atmosphere in the room is thick with unspoken tension. A tall, well-built man with dark hair turns his back on the woman, his posture rigid and indifferent. He tucks one hand into his pocket, signaling a sense of clinical detachment from the situation. In the foreground, the woman is seen clutching a white cloth or garment to her chest, her face partially obscured by her long, wavy auburn hair. A subtle blush creeps across her cheek, hinting at a mixture of embarrassment and agitation as he prepares to leave her presence without a second glance. As the man begins to walk away, his voice cuts through the silence, heavy with a sense of superiority. The frame focuses on their physical proximity, or lack thereof, as he continues his exit. He speaks of a performance or an act that has just been validated. The woman remains frozen, still holding the fabric tightly against her, her silence reflecting the weight of the power dynamic shifting between them. The confirmation, he mentions, suggests that a test of some kind has just concluded. Just before exiting, the man pauses to glance back over his shoulder. His expression is sharp and piercing, his dark eyes narrowed with a look of intense scrutiny. There is no warmth in his gaze. Instead, it is the look of a hunter or a businessman who has just secured a favorable deal. His sharp jawline and perfectly styled hair give him an air of untouchable authority, leaving the woman under the pressure of his final, lingering observation. The focus shifts to the woman, her face now fully visible and flushed with a deeper crimson. She looks downward, her eyes wide with a blend of apprehension and internal conflict. Above her, a speech bubble carries the man's final ultimatum. "Contact me if you decide to take my offer." The sitting behind her looks like a dressing room or a bathroom, emphasizing the vulnerability of her current state compared to the cold, transactional nature of the offer he has left on the table. The final close-up reveals the man's lower face, twisted into a subtle, confident smirk. He is no longer looking at her, but his internal monologue reveals his true thoughts. She's meticulous. This realization seems to please him, confirming that she is a worthy pawn or partner for his future plans. The smirk sound effect emphasizes his victory, showing that despite her hesitation, he believes he has already won this psychological game.
The confrontation has ended, and the man finally makes his departure. The sound of his heavy footsteps, clomp, echoes through the room as he walks toward the plain wooden door. His back is turned to the viewer, showing the crisp, broad lines of his white dress shirt, symbolizing his return to a world of order and control after the intimate tension of the previous moment. After he leaves, a heavy silence fills the space, represented by a jagged, radiating speech bubble that poses a single, haunting question. So why? It captures a moment of deep internal reflection or disbelief, as if the character left behind is grappling with the logic of the offer just made, or the dark reality of the situation they are now entangled in. The narrative shifts to a more clinical, investigative tone. A hand reaches out to flick through a set of documents, revealing a clipped photograph of a handsome, light-haired man. A handwritten note at the bottom of the photo identifies him as the only son of Dong-un Group, marking him as a high-profile individual of significant interest. As the investigator digs deeper into the file of the subject, Dong-sung Lee, the grim details of his private life come to light. The document lists his address in the Sangbuk neighborhood of Seoul and reveals damaging investigation findings. The records include a history of purchasing illegal sexual enhancement drugs and a pattern of soliciting prostitution and frequenting illegal entertainment venues. The polished image of the corporate heir is shattered by these revelations. Back in a modern office, presumably at a prosecutor's or investigator's desk, the dark-haired man from the earlier scenes reviews the file. He wears a professional blue sweater over a collared shirt, his expression unreadable but focused. As he holds the incriminating paperwork, a thought bubble expresses his sheer disdain. How did she end up with a loser like him? It is clear that his interest in this case is not just professional, but deeply personal.
The scene opens with a tense atmosphere in a modern office. A light-haired man in a white dress shirt leans toward his colleague, his expression a mix of suspicion and concern. He pointedly asks if the investigation currently on the table has anything to do with the Dong-un Group, a powerful corporate entity. His voice carries a hint of disbelief as he questions the possibility of them ending up on the same side of this conflict. The camera shifts to a low-angle shot from behind the dark-haired man seated at the desk. He remains composed, his posture rigid and professional. Without turning around or showing a hint of hesitation, he provides a short, clipped response. Not exactly. The ambiguity of his answer fills the room with an unspoken tension, suggesting that while the connection may not be direct, it certainly exists. The light-haired man isn't satisfied with such a vague dismissal. He continues to press, his logic sharp. He notes that his colleague isn't the type of person to make specific requests or move pieces on the board without a very calculated reason. Then he brings up a critical piece of information, the close relationship between the chairman of Dong-un and the chief prosecutor, implying a web of corruption that they are dangerously close to touching. The focus shifts to the dark-haired man's face. He looks down at the documents in his hands, his eyes shadowed and unreadable. He offers no rebuttal, no explanation, and no comfort. This heavy, prolonged silence speaks louder than words, confirming that the stakes are much higher than he is willing to admit. He holds the papers tightly, caught in the weight of his own secrets. Finally, the light-haired man realizes he won't be getting any more answers today. He lets out a deep, weary sigh, raising a hand to rub his forehead in frustration. The stress of the situation is visible in his furrowed brow and the slight perspiration on his face. "Never mind," he mutters, deciding to drop the subject for now, though it is clear the suspicion will continue to linger between them. Standing firm, the seated investigator justifies his relentless pursuit of the case. He expresses a firm belief in the integrity of his office, stating that a prosecutor should never be forced to tiptoe around those who are simply covering for their colleagues during an active investigation. His resolve suggests a man who values justice over the internal politics of the prosecution service. The dark-haired man's expression softens slightly, moving from cold professionalism to a rare moment of camaraderie. He looks up with a small, genuine smile and offers his gratitude for the help he has received. To ease the lingering tension, he makes a light-hearted promise. "I'll buy you a drink next time." The light-haired man, still feeling the mental exhaustion from their heavy debate, responds with a mix of exasperation and amusement. As he prepares to leave, he dismisses the offer with a huff, muttering about his colleague's use of flattery to get his way. Despite his complaining, his body language suggests he is familiar with, and perhaps even fond of, this stubborn side of his friend.
As the light-haired man walks away, his internal monologue reveals a deep underlying anxiety that he didn't dare voice out loud. He admits to himself that he has no idea why his colleague is so dangerously obsessed with this specific case. A dark thought crosses his mind. If this investigation goes south, the dark-haired man risks losing his entire career. The final shot captures the light-haired man pausing, his hand raised as if in a gesture of lingering concern or a sudden realization. A small sweat drop and a startled punctuation mark indicate he is still processing the gravity of what was discussed. He is left standing in the office, looking back at his friend, fully aware that they have just crossed a point of no return in their investigation.
The story opens with a heavy atmosphere of political intrigue. A tall man in a dark suit stands with his back to us, overlooking a shadowy crowd of elite figures. The text emphasizes the sheer gravity of his target. A lone prosecutor going after both a chaebol and a politician? A footnote clarifies the immense power he is up against, defining a chaebol as a massive, family-run South Korean conglomerate. He is not just fighting a person, he is fighting an empire. The camera focuses on the shadowy silhouette of a man who represents the pinnacle of influence. The stakes are raised even higher as the narration continues, especially when that politician is being considered as a presidential candidate. The purple glowing text underscores the danger of the situation. The prosecutor is effectively trying to topple a man on the verge of becoming the most powerful person in the country. Despite the magnitude of the task, the prosecutor is completely alone. Two speech bubbles drift over an abstract, high-tension background, noting that no one put him up to it, and it's not like he has any connections to back him up. This highlights his isolation. He has no powerful allies or secret backers. He is a man driven by a motive that those around him cannot comprehend. The scene shifts to a more personal, chibi-style interaction between two characters to lighten the heavy mood, though the underlying tension remains. A brown-haired man sighs inwardly, thinking, "Sigh, if only I knew why you're doing this." The dark-haired prosecutor, looking calm and stoic even in this simplified form, asks, "What did you say?" This exchange highlights the mystery surrounding the prosecutor's true intentions. Finally, we see the brown-haired man standing in a modern professional office. He turns to leave, his posture tense as he places a hand on his hip. He dismisses the previous question with a curt, "Nothing. I'll be going now, so just make sure you keep your end of the deal." The wide shot of the office, filled with stacks of documents and a sterile atmosphere, reminds us of the long, difficult legal battle that lies ahead. The prosecutor, seated at his desk, gives a final short confirmation to his visitor. Overwhelmed by the stacks of case files and legal books surrounding him, he simply replies, "All right," signaling that the deal is struck and it is time to return to the isolation of his work. As the visitor departs, a hand is seen waving from the foreground, a casual gesture that contrasts with the sterile, high-pressure environment of the prosecutor's office. "See you later," the visitor calls out. The prosecutor remains at his station, framed by rows of blinds and blue storage boxes labeled "Prosecutor," already mentally moving back into his investigation. The heavy sound of the door closing, clump, echoes through the room, leaving the prosecutor in total silence. He doesn't look up immediately, his eyes cast downward in deep thought. The only sound remaining is the weight of his own unspoken reflections as he processes the gravity of the information he has just received. With his guest gone, the prosecutor's focus becomes razor-sharp. He casts a silent glance toward a specific document held in his hand, his expression unreadable but intense.
Clad in a professional blue sweater and white-collared shirt, he looks every bit the diligent investigator ready to dig through the layers of deception. In a moment of quiet introspection, the truth behind his actions begins to surface. As he stares at the evidence, his inner monologue reveals the personal nature of this quest. He thinks to himself, "Here I am, voluntarily digging into Dong Song's background for that woman." This admission hints that while the case involves powerful politicians and conglomerates, his true driving force might be a promise made to someone special. The story begins with a close-up of a woman with long, reddish-brown hair. She appears deep in thought, perhaps a bit tense, as she listens to a final ultimatum or a decisive proposal. A speech bubble hangs over her, stating firmly, "Contact me if you decide to take my offer." This sets a mysterious tone, suggesting a high-stakes deal or a life-changing choice is now resting entirely in her hands. The scene shifts to a handsome man sitting in a professional office setting. He is dressed in a blue sweater over a white-collared shirt, looking relaxed yet intently focused. As he reviews a document in his hand, a slight, intrigued smile plays on his lips. He thinks to himself, "What an interesting woman," indicating that the previous character's actions or reputation have caught his attention and sparked a newfound fascination. The setting moves to a cluttered desk filled with stationery, scissors, and notebooks, symbolizing the busy environment of a planning office. An off-screen voice expresses shock and confusion regarding a sudden change in plans. The speech bubbles read, "You want to revisit the direction of the exhibition planning? What do you mean?" This highlights a moment of professional friction and a sudden shift in the project's strategy. As the discussion continues, the characters try to figure out the hierarchy and the sequence of events. One person points out, "I thought Miss Zhonghua was in charge of the Ulsol exhibition." Another responds to confirm the chain of communication. "Yes, so Miss Zhonghua called Miss Ulsol." This dialogue establishes the key players involved in the exhibition and suggests that a complicated web of communication is at play. Finally, we see a woman in a pink blouse and gray skirt standing in the middle of the office. Her eyes are tightly shut, her brow is furrowed, and her hands are clasped nervously in front of her. The word grimace appears beside her, vividly capturing her distress. She seems to be the one bearing the brunt of the exhibition's complications, feeling the immense pressure of the situation as she navigates the difficult demands of her superiors. The tension in the office reaches a boiling point as the true nature of the conflict is revealed. The subordinate, standing stiffly with her hands clasped in a gesture of extreme discomfort, reports a shocking development. She hesitantly explains the reason for the project's sudden halt, but apparently Miss Ulsol cursed her out. This reveal highlights a significant interpersonal breakdown that has left the planning team in a state of paralysis. The situation grows even more complicated as the subordinate continues her report to her superior, Miss G. Looking down at the troubled, pink-haired woman, the dialogue reveals that Miss Ulsol has become completely uncooperative with the junior staff. The speech bubble explains that Miss Ulsol insisted on speaking only with you, Miss G, so Miss Zhonghua is in a tight spot right now. The pressure is now squarely on Miss G to step in and fix the mess. We get a close-up of Miss G, who listens to the report with a troubled and weary expression. Clad in a professional black turtleneck and white blazer, she holds a pen as if she was in the middle of work before being interrupted by this crisis. A single bead of sweat on her face betrays her internal stress as she processes the fact that she must now personally deal with the notoriously difficult Miss Ulsol. Deciding to take charge of the situation to relieve her staff, Miss G offers a solution. She calmly instructs her subordinate, "All right, I'll give Miss Ulsol a call after lunch. You can go back to your work." Hearing this, the junior staff member is overcome with visible relief, her eyes brightening as she exclaims, "Okay, thank you, Miss G." The sequence concludes with a wide shot of the office. Miss G remains seated at her desk, the weight of the upcoming phone call still hanging over her. Meanwhile, the subordinate is seen bowing deeply in gratitude, indicated by the bow sound effect as she prepares to leave the office, thankful that her superior has stepped in to handle the verbal aggression of their difficult client.
The story begins with a sense of quiet observation. From over the shoulder of a person in the foreground, we see a woman with long, reddish-brown hair tied in a high ponytail, sitting at her office desk. The atmosphere is professional, yet slightly tense, set against the backdrop of large floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a hazy cityscape. A sharp clack echoes through the room, perhaps the sound of a door closing or an object being placed firmly, signaling the start of an interaction. The perspective shifts lower, focusing on the physical space between the two individuals. We see the edge of a modern white desk and the sleek lines of an office chair. The foreground is dominated by the blurred sleeve of a pale pink shirt as someone moves closer. The sound effect, clack, repeats, emphasizing the rhythmic, deliberate footsteps or the mechanical sounds of a busy office environment as the distance between the characters closes. In a close-up shot, the woman's hand reaches down to her hip or lower back. The word pat appears on the screen, indicating a light rhythmic tapping or a gesture of self-soothing. She seems to be checking for something, or perhaps trying to ease a physical sensation, her fingers pressing against the dark fabric of her trousers. This moment suggests a subtle shift from professional composure to personal preoccupation. The focus returns to the woman's face in a tight profile shot. Her expression is one of clear exhaustion or mild distress. A small bead of sweat trickles down her temple, and her mouth is slightly agape as she exhales a heavy sigh. Floating near her head is the bold text, "Sore," highlighting the physical toll the day has taken on her. Despite her elegant earrings and polished appearance, her weary eyes betray her internal fatigue. Finally, the camera pulls back to show her torso as she adjusts herself in her seat. She wears a crisp white button-down shirt tucked into high-waisted dark trousers. One hand is placed firmly on her thigh as she straightens her posture, seemingly trying to find a comfortable position despite the soreness she feels. The lighting catches the shimmer of her hair and the professional setting of the office, capturing a quiet, private moment of a woman preparing herself to face whatever task comes next. The atmosphere shifts from professional to intensely personal as a dark-haired man leans in close to the woman, their faces mere inches apart. A playful yet sharp smirk dances on his lips as he gazes into her eyes, his presence overwhelming her space. He speaks with a challenging tone. Looks like we'll have to redefine what cold as stone means, suggesting that her composed exterior is finally beginning to melt under his influence. The impact of his words and proximity is immediate and physical. A close-up shot focuses on the woman's ear, where a vivid red blush creeps across her skin, betraying her flustered state. Even as she tries to remain still, the heat rising to her face is undeniable. Her elegant, square-shaped diamond earring catches the light, contrasting with the warm, flushed tone of her skin as she struggles to maintain her stone-cold mask. Despite the internal chaos, the narrative focus remains on the necessity of their situation. A speech bubble appears near her jawline, stating firmly, "All we have to do is just put on an act." This line serves as a reminder, perhaps to herself or as part of their shared plan, that this intense interaction is supposed to be a performance, even if the physical reactions she is feeling seem far too real to be scripted.
Back at her desk, the woman is left alone with her thoughts, staring down at her workspace. Her hand rests near her smartphone, which lies next to an office telephone and a stack of documents. Her internal monologue is filled with uncertainty as she wonders, he wouldn't go this far just to back out, would he? The physical distance has returned, but the mental weight of their previous encounter lingers, leaving her to question his true intentions. In the final moment, the woman reaches out to her phone, her fingers hovering just over the screen. The word "halt" appears in a jagged, dark red font, illustrating her sudden indecision. Her mind is a whirlwind of conflict as she stares at the device, a single question echoing in her thoughts. Should I ask him?
She is caught between the need for professional clarity and the fear of what his answer might reveal about the act they are playing. Finally, the frame zooms in for a dramatic close-up of the moment of truth. Her slender fingers are now pressed firmly against the dark, reflective screen of the phone. The action lines flanking the device suggest a sudden, decisive movement or the vibrating buzz of a notification. This is the point of no return, the bridge between her internal hesitation and the external reality of making contact. The narrative flashes back to the catalyst of her current distress. Superimposed over a blurred background of a vanity or dressing table, her memories echo with the weight of time and a past conversation. She calculates the hours with agonizing precision. It's only been half a day since I said that to him. Below that memory, another bubble recalls her own ultimatum or invitation. Contact me if you decide to take my offer. The contrast between her bold offer and her current hesitation underscores the high stakes of this social gamble. The scene opens with a moment of raw, quiet vulnerability. A woman with long, cascading waves of mahogany hair sits in the dim light of a room, her expression clouded with a mixture of apprehension and deep thought. Her shoulders are bare, and she clutches a white fabric, perhaps a bedsheet or a towel, tightly against her chest, as if using it as a shield against her own uncertainty. A single bead of sweat or a nervous tear traces her cheek, highlighting the tension she feels as she gazes off into the distance, lost in a difficult decision. The focus shifts to her current state, now dressed professionally in a crisp white blouse over a dark turtleneck. Despite her composed outward appearance, her inner monologue betrays her anxiety. A thought bubble looms above her, revealing the pride and fear warring within her mind. I don't want to seem desperate. It is a classic internal struggle, the need to move forward versus the fear of losing her dignity in the eyes of another. The tension moves from her mind to her physical actions. Sitting at a desk littered with official documents and a coiled phone cord, her hand hovers tentatively over her smartphone. The sharp lines of her business attire and the sterile environment of the office emphasize the professional nature of the deal she is contemplating. Her fingers are tense, almost trembling as she reaches for the device that could change everything with a single tap. The source of the disturbance is revealed, the sharp, persistent ring of her office landline. The camera angles down toward the stark white telephone sitting on her desk, its coiled cord twisting like a living thing. Nearby, her modern smartphone sits silent, making the traditional ring of the desk phone feel even more formal and demanding of her immediate attention. With a soft click, she lifts the receiver, her professional mask sliding perfectly into place. Her expression is now one of cool, focused determination as she brings the handset to her ear. She introduces herself with practiced poise, her voice likely steady despite the earlier flinch. "Hello, this is So-Young Ji." At this moment, she is no longer the vulnerable woman in the shadows, but a woman of business taking control of the conversation. The contemplative silence is shattered by a sudden, jarring sound that causes her to flinch. The narrative shifts to an extreme close-up of her eye, wide with a mixture of shock and involuntary reaction.
The sharp, jagged lettering of the sound effect underscores the physical jolt to her system, pulling her instantly out of her deep internal monologue and back into the high-pressure reality of her office. The scene transitions into a sequence of brief, clipped acknowledgments as she listens to the voice on the other end. The dialogue bubbles are sparse, reflecting a one-sided conversation where she is receiving important instructions or confirmation. Her responses are short and professional, yes, and yes, I understand, indicating that the offer discussed earlier may finally be reaching its critical turning point. The sequence concludes with the final decisive commitment. Standing in the center of her bright, minimalist office, she delivers a firm promise, "I'll be there right away." The wide shot of the room, with its clean lines and soft light, symbolizes the clarity she has finally found. The hesitation is gone, the decision has been made, and she is ready to step out and face whatever or whoever is waiting for her. The scene opens with a wide, somber shot of a young woman standing alone in a vast, minimalist space. Her posture is guarded, hands clasped tightly in front of her as she gazes downward, avoiding any direct eye contact. She is dressed in a professional yet modest ensemble, a crisp white-collared shirt over a black turtleneck and high-waisted dark trousers. The atmosphere is thick with tension, punctuated only by the faint, shimmering dust motes dancing in the cold light, emphasizing her isolation and the weight of the conversation about to unfold. The focus shifts to an older, elegant woman who exudes an air of calculated authority. Adorned with large, shimmering diamond earrings that catch the light, she wears a confident, almost predatory smile. Without any room for pleasantries, she delivers a sharp, direct blow to the silence. "I'll get straight to the point," she declares, her eyes fixed on her target. "Dong Song came by the house yesterday." The mention of the name carries a heavy significance, acting as a catalyst for the brewing conflict. We see a close-up of the older woman's attire, a vibrant, bold red dress with structured shoulders and large decorative buttons, cinched at the waist with a black belt. Her hand rests near her collarbone, a gesture that appears refined but serves to highlight her status. Every detail of her appearance, from the delicate necklace to the perfectly coiffed hair, suggests a person used to being in control of both her surroundings and the lives of those within them. She is the picture of unwavering composure against the younger woman's visible unease. The climax of the exchange arrives with a startling revelation. The older woman's voice rings out through a speech bubble. "He says he wants to marry you." The words hang in the air, heavy and transformative. Below the text, the younger woman's hands are shown trembling. A sharp flinch sound effect underscores her physical reaction to the news. Her knuckles are white, and her body stiffens, signaling a deep sense of shock, dread, or perhaps a realization that her fate is being decided by others without her consent. The scene opens with a heavy air of finality. A speech bubble looms at the top of the frame, delivering a strict and perhaps daunting deadline. By the end of this year at the latest. Below the text, we see the side profile of a woman with long, wavy, mahogany red hair tied into a high ponytail. She wears a sharp, professional outfit consisting of a dark turtleneck layered under a crisp, white-collared shirt. Her expression is veiled in shadow, but her posture remains rigid. A distinctive diamond-shaped silver earring glints on her ear, catching the light as she absorbs the weight of the words spoken to her. The camera shifts to a medium close-up, revealing the woman's face in full detail. Her large, amber-colored eyes are wide, trembling slightly with a mixture of shock and dawning apprehension. The high ponytail style emphasizes the elegant curve of her neck and the sharpness of her features. She looks slightly upward and off-camera, as if staring at the person who just delivered the ultimatum. The background is blurred and bright, suggesting a formal or office-like environment, which contrasts with the internal turmoil visible
noticeable in her gaze. Her lips are parted just a fraction, as if she is breathless, struggling to process the gravity of the timeline she has been given. The final frame captures the immediate emotional aftermath. The woman's physical presence is pushed to the periphery, partially obscured and faded, as the focus shifts entirely to her internal reaction. A jagged, spiked speech bubble, indicating a sharp internal jolt or a sudden exclamation, dominates the center of the frame. Inside, the word "what" is written in a deep magenta hue. The background is filled with vertical speed lines and a hazy, sparkling texture, visual metaphors for the feeling of the world spinning or the heart racing. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated disbelief, marking a turning point in the narrative where the character's reality has been fundamentally shaken. The scene opens not with a face, but with a heavy, life-altering declaration. A speech bubble hangs in the air, carrying words that feel more like a command than a proposal. He says he wants to marry you, by the end of this year at the latest. The clinical, hurried timeline suggests this isn't a matter of romance, but one of business or family obligation, setting an immediate tone of pressure and inevitability. We see the protagonist, a woman with flowing reddish-brown hair tied in a high ponytail, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. Her striking red eyes are wide, and her lips are slightly parted as the weight of the marriage ultimatum sinks in. She stands frozen, her elegant attire and silver geometric earrings contrasting with the look of dazed vulnerability on her face as she processes the news. The perspective shifts lower, focusing on her trembling hands and the sharp, jagged speech bubble that escapes her. What? The word is small but explosive, puncturing the heavy atmosphere. The visual focus on her torso and the slight disarray of her white blouse emphasizes the physical shock radiating through her body, as if the air has been kicked out of her lungs. A tight close-up on her face reveals the internal turmoil beneath her poised exterior. Her brow furrows into a deep frown of distress, and a single bead of sweat rolls down her cheek. The sound effect twitch appears near her temple, signifying her struggle to maintain control as her eyes dart away, searching for an escape from the reality of the situation. The shock has now turned into a palpable sense of dread. In a final attempt to regain control of her destiny, she begins to speak, her voice small. "Mother, But she is immediately cut off. A larger, more dominant speech bubble overrides her, dismissing her feelings before she can even voice them. "I heard already. Dongzong made some kind of mistake, right?" The cold interruption suggests that her mother is more concerned with the logistics of a mistake or a scandal than her daughter's consent, leaving the protagonist trapped in a web of family expectations.
The perspective shifts to the other woman in the room, her presence dominating and cold. A tight crop focuses on her mouth, curved into a sharp, calculated smile. Her red lipstick looks almost like a wound against her pale skin as she speaks with a mocking familiarity. "So young, you grew up watching that mother of yours, so you must know," she begins, her words dripping with a condescending tone that suggests a long, painful history between their families. The woman leans forward, her hands eligibly clasped beneath her chin, showcasing a simple gold band on her finger. Her movements are poised, yet they feel like a trap closing in. She continues her lecture with a forced philosophical air. That everyone makes mistakes in life sometimes. The word mistakes is emphasized in dark red, highlighting the sting behind her gentle reminder. Finally, we see the full face of the antagonist. She sits regally in a high-backed white chair, draped in a bold red dress and adorned with heavy, sparkling diamond earrings and a matching necklace. Her expression is one of triumphant satisfaction. She watches So Young like a cat watching a bird, her eyes narrowed as she prepares to deliver the final blow. Just like how
The camera drops to focus on the woman's lap, emphasizing the physical distance and the power dynamic between them. The final part of her sentence lands with devastating precision. You ended up with our family because of your mother's silly mistake. By calling a life-altering event a silly mistake, she completely devalues So-young's existence and her place in the family, reducing her to a mere consequence of someone else's error. The scene returns to So-young, but the world around her has changed. The background has dissolved into a dark, textured purple, representing the suffocating pressure she feels. Her expression is no longer just shocked, it is hollow and pale, her eyes wide as the sound effect "sha" rushes over her like a cold wave of realization. She stands paralyzed, stripped of her defenses by the cruel truth of her origin. The narrative returns to a more tense, atmospheric moment. A woman with long, wavy, reddish hair is shown from the chest up, her face partially veiled in a purple, shadowy light that suggests a dramatic internal monologue. She wears a black turtleneck under a white blouse. Below her, a stylized, glowing speech bubble contains a single, haunting question. Mistake? The dark, patterned background amplifies the feeling of realization or the weight of a choice that cannot be undone. The story begins with a heavy, somber revelation. A series of narration boxes appear against a gradient gray background, setting a melancholic tone. The text reveals a pivotal moment in the protagonist's life. A few days before my mum passed away, she told me about Chairman G. This creates an immediate sense of mystery, suggesting a hidden connection or a long-buried family secret involving a powerful figure. The scene shifts abruptly as the narrative travels back in time. A stark white rectangular box centered on a deep black void displays the words 29 years ago. This serves as a temporal bridge, transporting the reader away from the present grief and into the origins of the mystery that the protagonist's mother finally dared to speak of. In the past, we see a woman from behind, dressed in a professional white collared shirt and a salmon-colored vest. She is operating a large beige office photocopier, her hand resting gently on the machine. Suddenly, a sharp, jagged speech bubble pierces the quiet of the office environment, with someone calling out urgently, "Mi-sun." This introduces the character Mi-sun, likely the younger version of the protagonist's mother. Following the call, we see a clear portrait of Mi-sun. She has short, reddish-brown hair styled in a bob with soft bangs. Her expression is one of slight surprise or mild concern as she looks toward the person who called her. Bathed in the bright, soft light of a window with a blue sky background, she appears youthful and innocent, oblivious to the mistake or the drama that is about to unfold in her life.
The narrative deepens as the protagonist reflects on the stories her mother shared before her passing. Against a stark, dark background, a narration box appears like a title card, revealing the nature of her mother's past. Back when she was young, Mom said she and Chairman G had a romance straight out of a movie. This sets the stage for a story of high-stakes emotion and classic drama, while a small speech bubble at the bottom echoes the central question, Chairman G? We are introduced to the young Chairman G, a handsome man with dark, styled hair and a sharp, composed look. He is dressed formally in a white shirt and a brown tie, looking every bit the leading man his mother described. With a slight, charming smile and a hand resting behind his neck in a bashful but confident gesture, he presents a gift. A speech bubble captures his smooth, romantic words. "Here, I got this because it made me think of you." The focus shifts to the gift itself, a magnificent, overflowing bouquet of flowers. The arrangement is a lush mix of soft pink roses, vibrant purple carnations, and delicate filler flowers.
The flowers are rendered with sparkling highlights, emphasizing the magical and precious nature of the gesture. It is the physical manifestation of the movie-like romance they were beginning to build. The story then explains the circumstances of their first encounter. Text boxes over a soft, light background clarify their relative positions at the time. When they first met, Mom was a new employee, and Chairman G was rotating through teams for management training. It was a classic office romance setup, a humble newcomer meeting a man destined for leadership. Finally, we see the effect of this grand gesture on the young woman. She looks down at the bouquet, her face painted with a deep, unmistakable blush that spreads across her cheeks. Her eyes are wide with a mix of surprise and burgeoning affection, and she raises a hand to her chin as if stunned by the directness of his attention. In this moment, the professional boundaries of the office seem to fade, replaced by the sparks of a legendary romance. The story begins with a close-up of a breathtakingly vibrant bouquet, filled with lush pink roses and delicate purple blossoms that seem to sparkle with a romantic glow. Overlaid on this image is the inner monologue of a man deeply moved. He fell for her kindness and boldness right away. It is clear that this gift represents more than just a gesture. It is the physical manifestation of a sudden, overwhelming love born from an unexpected encounter. The perspective shifts to a wide shot in an office setting. The man stands holding the flowers, his expression one of shock and concern, as the woman begins to turn away from him. Huge speech bubbles dominate the frame, carrying the weight of her rejection. She reminds him of the harsh reality of their social standing. "But I'm just an ordinary employee, and you're already engaged." The gap between them is not just emotional, but professional and societal. As she continues to walk away, the camera focuses on her retreating figure and his legs rooted to the spot. The dialogue continues to cut deep. "You know we're from completely different worlds." The imagery emphasizes the distance growing between them as the man remains frozen near the office equipment, his grand gesture of the bouquet now feeling heavy and out of place in this sterile work environment. The tension reaches a breaking point as the man finally finds his voice. We see a close-up of his face, brow furrowed and eyes wide with desperation as he calls out, "I'm sorry." Next to him, the woman's face is partially visible, her cheek flushed a bright red from a mixture of embarrassment and suppressed emotion. She looks away, unable to meet his gaze, as the situation becomes increasingly painful. In the final moments of this encounter, the man reaches out or moves forward as a jagged, urgent speech bubble appears. "Wait, me son." We see a close-up of the bouquet once more, clutched tightly against his shirt and her shoulder as she continues to flee. The use of her name, Misan, adds a layer of intimacy and desperation to the scene, leaving their different worlds hanging in a precarious balance. Determined not to let her walk away, the man raises his voice, his shout cutting through the quiet office air like a thunderclap. From a perspective behind his head, we see a sharp, jagged speech bubble erupting with his desperate resolve. "I'll call it off." The intensity of his shout is mirrored by the dark, vertical speed lines in the background, signaling a moment of life-altering consequence. The woman, Misun, stops in her tracks and looks back over her shoulder, her face a mask of pure shock and disbelief. Her eyes are wide, her cheeks are still burning with a deep blush, and a small bead of sweat trickles down her face, showing the immense pressure of the situation. She stares at him, paralyzed by the weight of the words he just uttered, a promise that would shatter his current life for her sake. Closing the distance, the man speaks again, his voice filled with a raw, unyielding energy. We see a close-up of his face and chest as he clenches his fist near his heart, doubling down on his promise. With a fierce expression of determination, he proclaims loudly, "I'll break off the engagement." He is no longer concerned with social standing or his arranged future. He is focused entirely on the woman standing before him. His hand moves to grasp at his shirt, right over his pounding heart, as if trying to physically show her the depth of his sincerity. The background is filled with motion lines that emphasize the urgency of his plea. In a final, desperate push to reach her soul, he begs for her trust. "Give me a chance to prove that I love you." He is offering her everything, asking only for the opportunity to show that his feelings are real. The scene softens as the man looks down, his brow furrowed with a mixture of pain and profound affection. The jagged bubbles of the previous moments are replaced by a soft, pink-tinted cloud, reflecting the tenderness of his heart. In a voice that is likely now a soft, trembling whisper, he utters the words she never expected to hear. "I love you, Misun. I mean it." The vulnerability in his eyes proves that this is no longer just a gesture. It is a confession of a love he is willing to sacrifice everything for. The scene begins with a close-up of the man, his face flushed with a deep, nervous crimson. His expression is one of intense vulnerability and earnestness as he speaks from the depths of his soul. He presses his hand firmly against his chest, right over his heart, as if trying to physically convey the weight of the emotions he is offering. Every line on his face suggests a man who has finally gathered the courage to lay his feelings bare, held captive by the hope of being understood. The focus shifts to a magnificent, overflowing bouquet of flowers, a vibrant tapestry of soft pinks, deep purples, and creamy whites. The blossoms are dusted with a magical, shimmering light, symbolizing the purity of the moment. Beneath this beautiful gesture, a narrative box appears, grounding the emotional atmosphere. Hearing his sincerity, it is clear that these flowers are more than just a gift. They are a physical manifestation of the honest words he has just spoken. The man leans in closer, his tall frame bowing slightly toward the woman in a gesture of intimacy and respect. The air between them is thick with unspoken tension and new beginnings. Above them, soft pink speech bubbles capture her quiet but firm response. "Don't forget to keep your word." It is a poignant moment of accountability, showing that while his words have touched her, she is asking for a commitment that transcends the beauty of a single moment. The perspective widens to show the two standing together under a bright, clear blue sky. The woman, looking up at him with a tender, blushing smile, reaches out to accept the heavy bouquet. Her eyes are filled with a newfound warmth, reflecting the blossoming connection between them. He stands before her, still slightly flushed, but appearing relieved, as they share a quiet, transformative space where a bridge of trust is finally being built. The final scene settles into a reflective silence, focusing on the two standing side by side. The narrative box provides the crucial internal context for the woman's change of heart. Mom said she opened up to him. This revelation suggests that the man's journey to this moment involved gaining the approval and trust of her family as well. It implies that his persistence and genuine nature have finally broken down the walls, allowing a future together to finally seem possible. The story opens with a stark, ominous transition. Against a void of absolute darkness, the word "however" appears in a sharp white serif font. The red outer glow surrounding the text hints at a brewing conflict or a sinister shift in the narrative, signaling that the previous peace or expectations are about to be shattered. The scene shifts to a tense confrontation. A tall man with dark, styled hair looks down at a woman named Misun, his expression a mix of desperation and cold calculation. He pleads with her to think about this realistically, delivering a crushing blow to her hopes. He reveals his true motivation, his wealth and social standing. He explains that if he does not proceed with an arranged wedding, he will be completely cut off from his family and their fortune. As the emotional weight of his betrayal sinks in, the man grabs Mi-sun's wrist. His grip is firm, an attempt to keep her still while he justifies his actions. Mi-sun, seen from behind with her reddish-brown hair tied back, stands frozen. The sharp action lines in the background emphasize the sudden, jarring nature of his movement and the high-stakes tension vibrating between them in the room. The confrontation reaches a boiling point. In a close-up shot, Mi-sun's frustration erupts. The action lines intensify as she reminds him of the promise he once made. A jagged, aggressive speech bubble contains her cry, "You said you were going to break off the engagement." The visual focus on their physical proximity highlights the intimacy they once shared, which is now being replaced by a sense of deep betrayal. Finally, the camera pans down to a document or newspaper clipping on a table, revealing the other woman and the man's ultimate goal. The headline discusses a third-generation chaebol heiress and a young entrepreneur, Chairman G. A portrait shows a handsome, smiling man, likely the same man from the previous panels, in his public persona. Overlooking the document is a final cold thought bubble. "I don't need anything else." This confirms that for him, power and the status of the chaebol world far outweigh his love for Mi-sun. The camera focuses on a small, clinical object resting on the table next to the newspaper clipping. It is a pregnancy test. Its two clear red lines indicating a positive result. This small device holds the weight of a new life, a stark contrast to the cold business documents lying just beneath it, representing a truth that cannot be ignored. Tears well up in Mi-sun's eyes, spilling over as her voice trembles with raw emotion. She is no longer just fighting for herself, she is fighting for their future. Abandoning her pride, she confesses her simple, desperate desire. "I just need you and our baby." Her face is a mask of heartbreak, hoping that the mention of their child might awaken a shred of the man she once knew. Despite her emotional confession, the man's reaction is devoid of warmth. He reaches out, but not to comfort her. His hand clamps firmly around her wrist once more, a physical manifestation of his need to control the situation rather than embrace the vulnerability she has just shared. The physical distance between them feels wider than ever, despite the touch. Desperation turns into a frantic prayer as Mi-sun begs him one last time, "Please don't get married." But her plea is cut short by a sudden, violent motion. The word "swing" arcs across the panel in a jagged, dark font, signaling a terrifying shift from verbal argument to physical aggression. The man's face is partially obscured, his eyes wide with a cold, flickering rage. The sequence concludes with a chilling close-up of the man, his features distorted by a dark violet hue of fury. His eyes are narrowed and bloodshot, his teeth clenched in a snarl that reveals his complete lack of remorse. Any trace of the young entrepreneur persona has vanished, replaced by a man driven to the brink by the threat to his status, ready to strike out at the person who was once his closest confidant. The scene opens with a jarring, violent motion. Against a pitch-black background, the word "whack" streaks across the frame in a shaky, distorted font. The visual effect of the lettering suggests a sudden, heavy blow that has just landed, breaking the silence with a sickening sound of physical force. Following the blow, the perspective shifts to a woman who has been knocked to the floor. She is shown from the torso down, dressed in casual beige trousers and an oversized light blue cardigan. Her posture is one of shock and vulnerability. She is propped up on her hands, her hair disheveled as she reels from the impact.
A jagged, dark speech bubble looms over her, echoing the aggressor's biting question, "Who do you think you are?" The tension escalates as the dialogue takes a darker, more manipulative turn. Within sharp, red-outlined speech bubbles that resemble shards of broken glass, the verbal assault continues. The unseen speaker lashes out with venomous words, accusing the woman of a calculated scheme. "Are you trying to ruin my life? Are you planning to have a baby so you can force your way into my family? Huh?" The words are heavy with paranoia and malice. The source of the violence and the shouting is finally revealed. A man with sharp, cold features stands over the woman, his face contorted in a mask of rage. He wears a dark olive-green button-up shirt, and a red, menacing aura radiates from him, reflecting his explosive temper. With a furrowed brow and an intimidating glare, he points a finger directly at her, emphasizing his dominance and his total lack of empathy. The final frame focuses on the back of the woman's head as she looks up at her tormentor. Her reddish-brown hair is pulled back in a simple half-tie, exposing her small, defenseless frame against the man's towering presence. The contrast between her silence and his looming aggressive shadow highlights the power imbalance of the situation, leaving the reader with a sense of dread for what might happen next in this toxic confrontation. The psychological warfare continues as the aggressor offers a hollow compromise. Against a backdrop of chaotic, scribbled textures that mirror the woman's mental distress, a sharp-edged speech bubble pulses with red light. The man's voice is cold and calculating as he says, "You wanted to keep studying, right? I'll let you do that." It is an ultimatum disguised as a gift, designed to manipulate her most precious ambitions. The price of his offer is revealed in a jarring, isolated frame. The speech bubble is jagged and aggressive, filled with a deep, textured blackness that feels suffocating. The text screams the devastating condition, but get rid of that baby. The demand is blunt and heartless, stripping away her agency and forcing her to choose between her future and her child. A sudden shift in scenery emphasizes the loneliness and the passage of time. The frame shows the corner of a room where an open, empty wooden cabinet stands as a metaphor for loss or a life packed away. On the tiled floor sits a patterned duffel bag, partially zipped, suggesting a departure or a significant life change that has already begun. The lighting is soft but melancholy, highlighting the stillness of a home that no longer feels whole. The scene moves outdoors to a brighter, more open environment. The woman is shown standing before a brick building, her appearance transformed. She wears a sophisticated dark navy or black dress with gold buttons, signaling a shift in her status or her determination to reclaim her life. Her expression is no longer one of fear. Instead, her eyes are fixed on the horizon with a solemn, quiet strength. She rests a hand gently near her stomach, a subtle but powerful gesture of protection. The sequence concludes with an intimate close-up of the woman's face and neck. The focus is on her profile. Her jaw is set firmly, and her gaze is downcast but steady. A simple whoosh effect line indicates a breeze or a moment of quiet reflection. This frame captures the internal transition from victim to survivor, as she carries the weight of her choices and the memory of the threats she has endured into a new chapter. The story begins with a bittersweet reflection on a life that could have been. The narrator reveals that their mother was a woman of intellect and achievement, a college graduate at a time when such a feat carried immense weight. However, the tone shifts to a somber realization. Had the mother chosen a path without the narrator, her life might have been exponentially easier, filled with the comforts and status her education once promised. The narrative transitions to the harsh reality of the mother's daily life,
To provide for her child, she set aside her degree and professional aspirations, instead working grueling hours on a factory assembly line. Clad in heavy protective gear and a mask, she spends her days performing repetitive manual labor. Yet the scene juxtaposes this hardship with a tender moment at home, showing her cradling her sleeping child. Her expression is not one of regret, but of quiet, resilient affection. Deepening the emotional core of the story, we see a close-up of the mother holding her young daughter in a baby carrier. Despite the visible exhaustion and the physical toll of her sacrifices, she holds the child with a profound sense of protection. The narrator acknowledges that their mother consciously chose a life of love and sacrifice over a life of personal ease, finding a different kind of purpose in the bond they shared. The scene shifts to the present, focusing on a moment of intense internal emotion. The narrator's hands are shown tightly clenched behind their back, the knuckles white with tension. This physical clench signifies a brewing storm of defensive pride and perhaps anger. It is the physical manifestation of someone bracing themselves against a painful truth or a cruel remark. Finally, the tension of the clenched hands finds its voice in a powerful internal monologue. The narrator rejects the notion that they are a burden or a regret. They declare with firm conviction that their existence is not a silly mistake to be dismissed. Validated by the years of their mother's sacrifice, the narrator asserts their own worth, turning a history of struggle into a foundation of unshakable self-identity.
The atmosphere is thick with tension as the young woman, her back to us, confronts the woman seated across the desk. Her long, wavy auburn hair cascades down her shoulders, and her posture is rigid with a mix of defiance and confusion. A large speech bubble looms above her, punctuating the silence with a sharp, defensive question. "Why are you bringing up my mother?" The lighting is soft yet dramatic, highlighting the high stakes of this personal inquiry. The perspective shifts to reveal the woman behind the desk, dressed in a sophisticated red blouse and adorned with elegant jewelry. She sits with her hands clasped calmly beneath her chin. Her expression is one of practiced composure, a slight knowing smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She looks up at the younger woman with an air of superiority, clearly holding the power in this verbal chess match within her luxurious office. As the conversation continues, the seated woman's smile remains fixed, but her words carry a biting edge. She leans slightly forward, her eyes narrowing with a condescending pity. She explains her motives with a chilling calmness. "Because I'm worried you're acting just as foolishly as she once did." The comparison to the younger woman's mother is intended to unsettle and provoke, striking at a deep personal wound. The camera zooms in closer on the woman in red, focusing on her elegant movements and the expensive surroundings. Despite the insult she just delivered, she maintains a facade of concern. A new speech bubble appears at the bottom of the frame, offering a hollow comfort. But don't worry. This brief pause in her speech serves to build suspense for whatever manipulative promise she is about to make next. In the final wide shot, the woman is framed centrally behind her desk, almost swallowed by the shadows of the room. She delivers her closing statement with a terrifying sense of authority and false benevolence. "As long as you're part of this family, I'll do my best as your mother." The contrast between her dark, calculating expression and the kind words she speaks highlights her role as a formidable antagonist, someone who uses the title of mother as a tool for control rather than affection. The frame pulls back to show the younger woman standing alone against a dark, oppressive background. Her back is still turned toward us, her auburn hair neatly tied, but her silhouette appears small and isolated within the vast, shadowy room. The vertical lines in the backdrop create a cage-like atmosphere, emphasizing how trapped she feels under the weight of the older woman's motherly expectations. The focus shifts to a tight close-up of the younger woman's face, though her eyes are obscured, highlighting her suppressed emotions. Above her, the older woman's voice rings out with an undeniable command. She nonchalantly dictates the next steps of the girl's life, stating that she will soon arrange a dinner with someone named Dong-sung. Her tone is patronizing, insisting that he will handle things properly and ordering the girl to be sure to get along with him. The tension reaches a breaking point in this extreme close-up of the younger woman's jawline and mouth. Her lips are pressed into a thin, tight line, and the word clench is written in a jagged, dark red font across the screen. This visual cue perfectly captures her physical struggle to remain silent while her internal anger and resentment threaten to boil over. Returning to the woman in red, we see her leaning back in her large white executive chair with an air of casual amusement. She toys with a ring on her finger, her expression relaxed and slightly smug. An empty speech bubble hangs in the air, representing a calculated silence that forces the younger woman to wait for her next move. She is clearly enjoying the psychological power she holds. The final shot is a medium-angle view across the desk, looking past the younger woman toward the seated antagonist. The desk serves as a physical barrier between them. The younger woman's diamond-shaped earring catches the light, a small glimmer of cold elegance that matches the sterile professional environment. Across from her, the woman in the red blouse remains poised, her hands resting calmly, marking the end of a conversation where one side has completely dominated the other. The atmosphere in the room shifts instantly as the woman in the red dress abruptly stands up, the motion underscored by a sharp sound effect. Her palm presses firmly against the table's surface as she rises, signaling that she has reached a turning point in the conversation and is ready to assert her dominance or make a final point. With her hands still resting visibly on the table, she calls out a name, Soyoung. The simple, singular address is intended to command the full attention of the person standing across from her. The close-up on her hand reveals a delicate gold ring, a subtle detail that contrasts with the authoritative weight of her gesture and the gravity of the name she just spoke. As the woman in the red dress continues, her expression softens into a practiced, elegant smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She leans slightly forward, her voice taking on a maternal, almost manipulative tone. She justifies her intrusive demands by claiming a deep personal bond, telling Soyoung, "I'm doing all of this because I think of you as my own daughter." The power dynamic between the two women becomes even more apparent as they face each other. The woman in red, dressed in a sophisticated puffed-sleeve gown with a black sash, uses her poise and appearance of high status to pressure the younger woman. The audible clack of her movements, or perhaps a glass being set down, punctuates the air, reinforcing the calculated nature of her presence. Finally, the woman reveals her true motive, stripping away the pretense of unconditional care. While she crosses her arms or gestures toward Soyoung, she delivers a cold, transactional ultimatum regarding Soyoung's personal life. She clarifies that she doesn't care about the longevity of the marriage, stating, "I'm not saying you have to stay married to Dong-sung forever." Instead, her demand is singular and chilling. Soyoung must simply just have one child to satisfy whatever agenda the older woman is pursuing.
The scene opens with a close-up of hands held together in a gesture of deceptive comfort. A woman's voice, smooth and reassuring, fills the air with a calculated offer. She promises to intervene in a crumbling marriage, claiming she will be the one to ensure a clean break. "Then I'll step in," she says, her words acting as a soothing balm. "Make sure you get divorced and help you walk away with a hefty settlement." It is a promise of freedom, wrapped in the guise of financial security and maternal protection. The perspective shifts to the woman's face, though her eyes remain hidden, focusing instead on her smug, knowing smile and elegant jewelry. She leans in, using her position as a parental figure to instill a sense of obligation and isolation in her listener. She poses a rhetorical question designed to make the protagonist feel utterly dependent. Where else would you find a stepmother who'd go this far for you? The smile is not one of warmth, but of a predator who has successfully cornered its prey. As the manipulation deepens, the visual metaphor of dark, thorny vines begin to encroach upon the frame, mirroring the suffocating nature of her influence. The stepmother strikes at the protagonist's sense of belonging within the larger family unit. Her words are sharp and divisive. "I'm the only one in this family who looks out for you." By discrediting everyone else, she ensures that she is the only voice the protagonist feels they can trust, effectively severing all other emotional lifelines. The camera pulls back to show the protagonist standing alone, her face blank and featureless, signifying her loss of identity under this psychological weight. Dark, jagged vines wrap tightly around her arm, a physical representation of the stepmother's control. Above her, a speech bubble looms like a dark cloud, demanding a final acknowledgement of this false reality. You know that, don't you? It is no longer a question,
but a command to accept the lie. The final scene strips away the illusion. The background is a chaotic mix of deep purples and shadows, crisscrossed by the sharp black thorns that have now fully manifested. The narration reveals the truth behind the gentle tone used in the previous panels. These were nothing more than sweet, sugar-coated words, a poisonous nectar designed to deceive. They were words that sound affectionate, but in reality, they were the very thorns used to bind and bleed the protagonist dry.
The scene transitions to a memory, bathed in a soft, deceptive light that contrasts with the previous shadows. The stepmother leans down toward the protagonist with a gentle, practiced expression of maternal concern. Looking back, the protagonist's narration reflects on her past vulnerability. "I used to think those words were truly sincere and loving." At that time, she was blind to the hidden agenda, mistaking calculated flattery for genuine affection. The memory continues as the stepmother reaches out, delicately grasping the protagonist's hand to maintain her facade of support. They stand in a grand marble-walled room, a setting that feels cold despite the stepmother's efforts to appear warm. The physical connection was a tool of control, a way to anchor the protagonist to her side and ensure she remained a submissive part of the stepmother's grand design. The narrative shifts back to the present, signaled by a sharp change in tone and visual energy. A bold, jagged speech bubble pulses with the protagonist's newfound resolve. "But I won't be swayed by them anymore." The word yank explodes across the bottom of the frame, indicating a sudden, violent movement. The psychological spell has finally been broken, replaced by a fierce determination to reclaim her own life. Action lines radiate from the center of the frame as the protagonist follows through with her decision. With a sharp, decisive motion, she pulls her hands away from the stepmother's grasp. The physical separation is symbolic of her mental liberation. The stepmother's hands are left suspended in the air, reaching for a puppet that is no longer there to be controlled. The sequence concludes with a focused shot of the protagonist's arm as she pulls back, her stance now rigid and defiant. In a simple, clean speech bubble, she utters a single word: "Mother." While it is a title of respect, in this context, it carries a heavy weight of irony and finality. She is no longer a child seeking comfort. She is an equal, standing her ground, ready to face the woman who tried to bind her in thorns. The atmosphere in the room is thick with tension. An older woman, her face partially obscured but her expression clearly stern, issues a cold, prophetic warning. Her voice is level, yet it carries the weight of someone who believes they hold all the cards.
Even if you say that, she states with a chilling finality, things aren't going to turn out the way you think. She is certain of her influence, attempting to exert dominance over the conversation. The younger woman, with her vibrant reddish-pink hair tied back in a high ponytail, doesn't flinch. Instead, a mocking smirk plays across her lips. Her eyes are sharp, filled with a mix of disdain and confidence. She delivers a verbal blow that strikes at the heart of the older woman's schemes. "This marriage is already a lost cause anyway," she retorts. Her demeanor suggests she has already moved past the point of caring about the social or familial obligations being forced upon her. The perspective shifts to a medium shot, highlighting the younger woman's attire, a sharp white-collared shirt over a black turtleneck. Her hand is raised slightly toward her chest, a gesture that feels both defensive and assertive. The crispness of her clothing mirrors the cold, calculated nature of her words. She stands her ground, physically and emotionally, refusing to be intimidated by the power dynamics at play. The older woman's composure finally cracks. The image is framed with a glare sound effect as her eyes widen in shock and fury. Sweat beads on her temple, and her face is cast in a purple, ominous shadow. "What?" she stammers, her voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and burgeoning rage. The realization that she has lost control of the situation, and perhaps the younger woman, begins to sink in. Struggling to process the sudden defiance, the older woman, elegant even in her anger, adorned with a diamond necklace and matching earrings, demands clarification. The frame focuses on her neck and the expensive jewelry, symbolizing the high society world she desperately tries to maintain. "What do you mean?" she asks, though her expression suggests she is terrified of the answer. The power has shifted, and the lost cause of the marriage is now a weapon being used against her. The scene begins with a moment of cold tension. A young woman with long, wavy, rose-colored hair tied in a high ponytail turns her head slightly, her expression stoic and detached. She delivers a final, blunt piece of advice to the person behind her. "I think it'd be better if you heard it from Dong Song directly." Her refusal to engage further sets a tone of finality, suggesting a deep-seated conflict or a truth she is no longer willing to hide. Continuing her exit, the woman looks back one last time with a gaze that is both weary and resolute. There is no warmth left in her eyes as she makes her intentions clear. With a sharp, professional coldness, she utters her parting words. "If you don't need anything else from me, I'll be going." The turn sound effect lingering in the air emphasizes her physical and emotional withdrawal from the conversation. As the door closes with a deafening slam, the focus shifts to the woman left behind. An older woman, elegantly dressed, but wearing a mask of pure rage, stares at the door in disbelief. Her face is contorted with anger, her brow is deeply furrowed, and her mouth is pulled into a grimace of indignation. The jagged, dark aura lines radiating around her head visually represent her mounting blood pressure and the shock of being so brazenly dismissed. The camera pans down to emphasize the older woman's physical reaction to her fury. Her fists are clenched so tightly they tremble, and the dark, heavy shading at the bottom of the frame illustrates a bottomless anger. Clad in a sophisticated red dress with a black sash, her rigid posture reveals a person used to being in control, now vibrating with a silent, menacing resentment as she processes the young woman's defiance. Finally, the scene shifts to the exterior of the building. The young woman has emerged from the confrontation and stands before a brightly lit establishment with a glowing pink neon sign that reads "Voman." The dark, quiet night of the street stands in stark contrast to the heated argument that just took place indoors. As she prepares to walk away into the shimmering city lights, the atmosphere feels heavy with the consequences of the bridge she has just burned. Seeking a change of pace after her tense confrontation, the young woman with the flowing rose-colored hair pushes through the heavy glass doors of the establishment.
Her silhouette is framed by the dim, atmospheric lighting of the interior as she steps inside, her blue shoulder bag tucked neatly under her arm. The rhythmic click of her shoes on the floor marks her transition from the cold night air into a place of warmth and social energy. Just as she enters, a hand enters the frame, waving enthusiastically to catch her attention. A bright, energetic voice cuts through the ambient noise of the room, calling out her name, So-young. So-young stops in her tracks, her expression one of mild surprise as she looks toward the source of the greeting, her large, thoughtful eyes searching the room to find the familiar face. The source of the call is a woman with short, wavy blonde hair and a radiant smile that lights up her entire face. Adorned with elegant, flower-shaped gold earrings, she appears genuinely thrilled to see her friend. She waves back with a cheerful shout, "Moa!" The shelves behind her, stocked with rows of bottles, suggest they are meeting in a sophisticated wine bar or lounge. The blonde woman is seated comfortably at the dark counter, exuding an air of relaxed elegance. She wears a patterned halter-style top under a loose, dark blazer, blending professional style with a night-out aesthetic. In front of her sits a chilled yellow drink filled with ice cubes, shimmering under the soft bar lights as she gestures for So-young to join her. So-young approaches the bar, the tension from her earlier encounter seemingly beginning to melt away in the presence of a friend. As she stands before the blonde woman, her friend leans back with a welcoming gaze and asks warmly, "It's been so long, how have you been?" The two women stand together against the backdrop of glowing wine refrigerators, ready to dive into a long overdue conversation and leave the drama of the day behind. The scene opens with an intimate atmosphere in what appears to be a dimly lit, upscale lounge or bar. A woman with long, wavy mahogany hair stands with her back to the viewer, clad in a crisp white blouse and dark slacks. As the conversation continues, the camera shifts to a medium close shot focusing on the woman's profile. Her companion, partially visible on the right with blonde hair, notes how rare this occasion is. The speech bubbles above them highlight the bittersweet nature of their meeting. "It's rare that you had time to meet up. It's been a while since we hung out like this." A soft rustle sound effect floats in the air, suggesting the gentle movement of their clothes or the background ambiance of the venue. Turning her head slightly, the woman offers a charming, knowing smile. Her large, expressive eyes and perfectly styled hair catch the ambient light of the room. She looks back toward her friend with an expression that is both elegant and mischievous. The background is a soft blur of purple hues and hanging light fixtures, emphasizing the cozy, private nature of their night out. She seems to be preparing a witty comeback to the comment about her busy schedule. The perspective shifts to a close-up of the woman from behind as she playfully defends herself. She gestures toward her companion, her voice rising with a hint of mock indignation. The speech bubble takes center stage, shouting, "Hey, what are you talking about? You were always the busier one." The dynamic lines on the left side of the panel emphasize her sudden movement and the lively, spirited energy she brings to the debate over who has been harder to reach. The final panel zooms in on the woman's face, capturing a more contemplative and focused gaze. Her eyes are wide as she lists the reasons for her friend's past absences. The two overlapping speech bubbles conclude the exchange by detailing the companion's hectic life. "You were always tied up, working overtime, going on dates." This moment of reflection adds depth to their relationship, showing a history of shared memories and a long-standing friendship that has endured through their various life changes.
The cheerful atmosphere of the reunion momentarily halts as a sharp realization flashes across the woman's face. Her expression shifts from a playful smile to one of mild shock or dawning memory. A small bead of sweat appears on her cheek, accompanied by a quiet, breathless "ah" escaping her lips. It is the look of someone suddenly remembering a past event that contradicts their current argument. the scene shifts into a hazy memory of a different evening. So Young is on the phone, receiving a persistent request from someone on the other end. The caller's dialogue box is jagged and demanding, pleading, "So Young, my friends say they want to see you. Can't you come and say hi? You came last time, why not today?" In the foreground, So Young tries to set a boundary, weakly stating, "I'm with my friends right now." The flashback continues, showing So Young standing in a crowded, brick-walled room with a worried expression. Clad in a white puffed-sleeved blouse and a brown sweater vest, she clutches her phone tightly to her ear. Her eyes are cast downward, filled with hesitation as she is pulled between her loyalty to the friends she is currently with and the social pressure coming through the phone. She looks deeply conflicted, caught in a moment where she cannot say no. The memory concludes with the final manipulative push from the caller. As So Young stands surrounded by the blurred figures of her friends, the voice on the phone dismisses her current plans entirely. The dialogue box insists, "You can see your friends next time. Just help me save face here." This reveals the true nature of her busy past. It wasn't just work or dates, but a constant struggle to satisfy the demands of others at the expense of her own time. Returning to the present, the two women sit together at the bar, a plate of fruit and 2 drinks sitting between them. The vibrant, playful energy from earlier has softened into a quiet, reflective mood. So Young looks down at her drink, her shoulders slumped slightly as she admits the truth to herself. Her internal thought bubble reads, "She's right, it's been a while since I met a friend like this." She finally acknowledges that she has been neglecting the genuine connections in her life while being tied up with superficial social obligations.
The scene begins with a moment of high tension and protective energy. Sharp, jagged speech bubbles dominate the frame, conveying a sense of urgency and loud, decisive action. Someone is demanding the truth, shouting, "Tell me everything, I'll take care of it for you." The background shows a blurred, modern setting, suggesting a conversation taking place in a private, possibly upscale environment where a conflict has reached its boiling point. The perspective shifts to a more intimate and emotional tone. A person gently cradles the face of a woman with long, wavy, reddish-brown hair. Her eyes are filled with sadness and hesitation, her cheeks slightly flushed. The dialogue bubbles take a softer, more persuasive approach, advising her, "If you keep it bottled up, it'll wear you out. Come on, spill it." The speaker is trying to provide a safe space for her to release her heavy burden. The camera zooms in on the woman's face, capturing the raw vulnerability of the moment. Her expression is one of deep distress, her eyes shimmering as if on the verge of tears. The sound effect choke appears beside her, indicating her struggle to find the words through her grief or anxiety. The person holding her whispers her name, Moa, confirming her identity and offering a final anchor of support as she prepares to speak. The tension breaks into a confession. The frames become minimalist, focusing entirely on the weight of the words being spoken. In a series of fading speech bubbles, Moa finally lets the secret out. She begins with, "The truth is," followed by the pivotal reveal, Dongsung and Nayoung. The fading text suggests a voice that is trembling or trailing off as she reveals a truth that has been painful to carry. The final scene erupts in a burst of fury. The emotional dam has broken, and the listener reacts with violent indignation on Moa's behalf. Large, spiky speech bubbles scream, "What? That son of a bee!" accompanied by a loud slam sound effect. This sudden shift from a quiet confession to an explosive, protective rage suggested the information revealed about Dongsung and Nayoung was a serious betrayal, prompting an immediate desire for retribution. The intensity of the conversation picks up as the friend leans in, their voice becoming more firm and supportive. 2 jagged, energetic speech bubbles dominate the frame, emphasizing the urgency of the plea. Tell me everything. I'll take care of it for you. This isn't just curiosity, it is a fierce promise of protection. The friend is ready to go to battle for her, offering a safe harbor for whatever painful truth is about to be revealed. The scene opens with a moment of tender concern. A woman with long, wavy chestnut hair looks down, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and hesitation. A hand gently cups her face, a comforting gesture from a friend who senses her inner turmoil. The friend encourages her to open up, saying, "If you keep it bottled up, it'll wear you out. Come on, spill it." It is clear that the woman has been carrying a heavy burden in silence, and her friend is determined to share that weight. Overwhelmed by the kindness and the pressure of the moment, the woman, addressed as Moa, begins to react physically to her emotions. Her cheeks are flushed with a pink blush, and her eyes are glazed with unshed tears. A choke sound effect appears, signifying that the words are literally catching in her throat. She looks at her friend, feeling the safety of their presence, but still struggling to find the courage to speak the words out loud. Finally, the silence breaks. In a minimalist frame that focuses entirely on the dialogue, Moa begins her confession. The words, "the truth is," hang at the top of the panel. Below, in a faded, almost whispered tone, she reveals the core of her distress. Dongsong and Nayoung. The truth regarding these two individuals is the catalyst for the drama, finally being released after being bottled up for so long. The calm is shattered instantly by a violent outburst of protective rage. As soon as the revelation is heard, the friend reacts with a physical slam, likely hitting a table or a wall in anger. The speech bubbles become sharp and aggressive, reflecting a total shift in mood from comfort to fury. They scream, "What? That son of a..." The betrayal by Dongsong and Nayoung has clearly crossed a line, and Moa's friend is now ready to take action. The scene erupts with a surge of aggressive energy as a hand tightly grips a glass of amber liquid, ice cubes clinking against the glass. The liquid sloshes near the rim, mirroring the turbulent emotions of the speaker. In a sharp, jagged speech bubble that signals intense anger, the character declares with lethal intent, "I'm going to break that bastards." This moment signifies the exact point where empathy for Moa transforms into an active plan for retaliation. The rage intensifies, filling the frame with a massive, explosive speech bubble that leaves no room for doubt about the speaker's resolve. The sentence from the previous moment is completed with a terrifying level of violence. "No, I'm going to crush his entire body." The sharp purple borders of the bubble and the bolded text emphasize a raw, unbridled fury directed at the person who caused Moa's suffering. The perspective shifts to show a blonde woman with a shocked and determined expression, her mouth open as she addresses Moa directly. She is frustrated by Moa's passive state, exclaiming, "Geez, so you're just here moping like this? You've got to get revenge." She wears ornate gold earrings and a dark patterned top, her wide eyes reflecting a mixture of disbelief and a fierce protective instinct as she tries to snap her friend out of her despair. As the blonde woman continues to watch her with a worried, expectant gaze, Moa remains seated at the table, her head slightly bowed and her gaze averted. The atmosphere in the room is heavy with the aftermath of the outburst. Moa's expression is somber, her face flushed as she quietly absorbs the suggestion. A single word hangs in the air in a small speech bubble at the bottom: revenge. The camera zooms in on a close-up profile of Moa as she ponders the weight of that word. Her expression is unreadable, but deeply serious. The blonde friend's voice continues to prompt her, the speech bubble asking, "Moa, if you were going to take revenge..." This lingering shot captures the internal transition of the protagonist as she moves from being a victim to potentially becoming the architect of her own retribution. Following the shocking revelation of betrayal, the room falls into a tense silence. The woman with chestnut hair, still processing the pain, asks the quiet but heavy question. Her voice is barely a whisper as she looks toward her friend, seeking a path forward. She asks, "How would you do it?
It is the first step towards seeking justice, or perhaps revenge for the hurt she has endured. Her blonde friend does not miss a beat. She turns slightly, her expression sharp and decisive, as if the solution has been clear to her from the very beginning. She dismisses any doubt with a bold counter-question. What's there to think about? For her, the time for mourning the betrayal has passed, and the time for a calculated response has begun. The blonde friend leans in closer, her presence becoming more commanding. The focus shifts to the proximity between the two, emphasizing the intimacy of their conspiracy. With absolute confidence, she declares that the path forward isn't complicated at all. She tells her friend, the answer's obvious. Finally, the plan is laid out in plain, shocking terms. The blonde woman places a supportive hand on her friend's shoulder, looking her straight in the eye to ensure the message sinks in. A large speech bubble emphasizes the gravity of her suggestion. You gotta start by stealing Naeong's boyfriend. It is a direct eye for an eye strategy designed to strike back at the source of the pain. The sheer audacity of the suggestion leaves the chestnut-haired woman momentarily speechless. Her eyes widen, and her breath catches as the weight of the plan settles over her. The small bubble containing only perfectly captures her internal shock and the realization of what she is being asked to do. The scene concludes with a dramatic, stylized frame that emphasizes the gravity of the decision. The words vibrate with intensity against a radial background, signaling a point of no return. The final confirmation is whispered back. I already am, Moa. With those words, the pact is sealed, and the wheels of revenge are officially set in motion. In a dimly lit upscale lounge, two friends are deep in conversation. The blonde woman, wearing an intricate lace-patterned top and a dark cardigan, leans in close to her friend with a serious expression. She drops a bombshell of a suggestion, her voice carrying a tone of mischievous conviction as she declares that the first step in their plan must be the most scandalous one. You gotta start by stealing Nayoung's boyfriend. The camera zooms in on the redhead's face, capturing her pure, unadulterated shock. Her large, reddish-brown eyes widen, and her breath hitches as the weight of her friend's suggestion sinks in. Clad in elegant silver geometric earrings, she looks frozen, staring back at her companion in disbelief, her mind racing to process such a bold and risky idea. The tension snaps as the redhead can no longer contain herself. A muffled "puffed" escapes her lips as she instinctively raises a hand to cover her mouth. Despite the gravity of the mission, the sheer absurdity of the plan strikes her funny bone. She leans back slightly, her eyes crinkling with amusement as she begins to chuckle, signaling that she might be more like her devious friend than she let on. Seeing her brilliant plan being met with laughter, the blonde woman becomes playfully indignant. She reaches out, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder to get her attention, her expression a mix of annoyance and eagerness. She snaps back with a loud, defensive question. What? Are you laughing at my idea? The atmosphere at the bar remains lively, with golden drinks sitting untouched as the drama unfolds between them. While her friend continues to giggle into her hand, the blonde woman leans further across the dark marble table, her gaze fixed and determined. She doesn't back down for a second. With a firm, unwavering tone, she adds a final exclamation to prove her sincerity. I mean it. It's clear that while it started with a laugh, this friendship is built on shared secrets and a very real, very messy agenda. The blonde woman, Moa, doubles down on her logic, shifting into a chibi, expressive style to emphasize her point. She slams her hand on the table with a determined bang as she lays out the evidence of Nayoung's feelings. She argues that if a heavy smoker like Nayeong actually quit smoking for this guy, she must be truly infatuated. Moa insists with fierce conviction. This is the perfect way to get back at her. As the impact of Moa's words settles, the redhead begins to see the twisted logic in the plan.
Still in their adorable, exaggerated forms, the redhead looks contemplative, her finger near her chin as she weighs the risks. Recognizing the effort Nayeon has put into this relationship makes the idea of stealing him even more effective as revenge. She finally murmurs, "Well, you have a point." The scene returns to the detailed, elegant art style as the redhead is lost in her own thoughts. While Moa continues to push the plan, the redhead harbors a secret she hasn't shared yet. A bead of sweat drops down her face as she wonders to herself, "Should I tell Moa that I've already tried?" This internal monologue reveals that she may have already made a move on the mysterious guy, adding a layer of hidden history to their plot. Suddenly, the rhythmic flow of their plotting is broken by a sharp sound from the entrance. A ding echoes through the lounge, signaling the arrival of someone new. Both women stop their hushed whispering, their attention drawn away from their drinks and toward the door. An off-screen voice is heard reacting in surprise. "Whoa, hey!" The atmosphere in the bar shifts instantly. A woman in the foreground is seen blushing and whispering into her hand, completely awestruck. She tells her companions to take a look at the guy who just came in, admitting she initially mistook him for a celebrity. In the background are two protagonists, the redhead and Moa, turn their heads in unison, their eyes fixed on the entrance as the very man they were just discussing finally makes his grand appearance. The heavy doors of the dimly lit lounge swing open as a tall, imposing figure steps inside. Dressed in a sleek, dark blazer over a textured black shirt, Yeon-hyuk carries an air of quiet authority. He pauses for a moment at the entrance, his expression unreadable and cold, as the ambient purple light of the room catches the sharp lines of his silhouette. As he moves further into the room, the atmosphere seems to shift. The frame focuses on his striking features, piercing eyes, and a stern, composed face. Surrounded by a faint artistic motif of blue roses, he looks like someone who commands attention without saying a word. His gaze is fixed forward, seemingly indifferent to the crowd around him. Nearby, a woman named So Young catches a glimpse of the newcomer. She is instantly startled, her body tensing as her eyes widen in disbelief. A cold sweat breaks out as she thinks to herself in a panic, "Yeon-hyuk, why is he here?" The sudden appearance of a man from her past, or a man she didn't expect to see, has clearly shaken her to her core. Overwhelmed by anxiety, So Young instinctively turns away, shielding her face with her hand to avoid being spotted. She hunches her shoulders, trying to make herself invisible against the bar counter. Her companion, a blonde woman sitting beside her, notices the sudden change in demeanor. Placing a concerned hand on So Young's back, she asks, "So Young, what's wrong?" But So Young remains frozen, terrified of the man now walking through the same room. With a heavy, rhythmic clump of his shoes against the floor, Yeon-hyuk walks deeper into the bar. His hands are casually tucked into his pockets, but his stride is purposeful. He passes by the seating area, a dark shadow moving through the neon-lit space, unaware, or perhaps simply uncaring, of the eyes beginning to follow him. As Yeon-hyuk strides through the room, he becomes the immediate center of attention. His powerful build and sharp tailoring don't go unnoticed. Even the blonde woman, unaware of So Young's internal panic, can't help but marvel at him. She exclaims in awe, "Huh? Whoa, look at that guy's physique," as her eyes follow his confident movements through the lounge. The man moves like a dark force through the social space, his hands tucked casually in his pockets as he passes the bar area. The atmosphere grows thick with tension for So Young, who is still trying to remain unnoticed. The phrase, "speak of the devil," hangs in the air, emphasizing the almost supernatural timing of his appearance just as he was on her mind. While So-young flinches and tries to hide, the blonde woman enters a state of deep thought, her appearance shifting to a chibi style to reflect her internal pondering. She touches her chin, trying to place where she has seen him before. She wonders if they had met on a blind date in the past, but quickly dismisses the idea, reasoning that there is no way she could ever forget a man with such a striking and memorable presence. The scene closes with a tight, dramatic close-up of So-young's face. Her expression is a mix of dread and reluctant admiration. Even through her fear and the sweat beading on her skin, she cannot deny the reality of the situation. Looking toward him, she admits to herself that, regardless of why he is there or how she knows him, he is unbelievably handsome. It isn't just the two friends watching him. Yun-hyuk seems to draw the gaze of every woman in the room. He is soon approached by another elegant woman who looks up at him with a clear sense of admiration. Observing the scene from afar, the blonde woman remarks on his undeniable magnetism, noting that it seems women simply won't leave a man of his stature alone. The woman makes her move. She approaches a tall man dressed in a sharp, dark suit. She stands before him with a polite, charming smile, her posture confident. She reaches out and gently takes hold of his sleeve or arm, stopping him in its tracks. The height difference is striking, emphasizing the man's imposing presence and her bold decision to intercept him. The story begins with a close-up of a woman with long, wavy auburn hair. She is at an upscale lounge or bar, indicated by the softly blurred rows of wine glasses and bottles in the background. Her expression is observant and slightly analytical. As she watches a man across the room, she notes to herself, "He does look a bit troubled, though," implying she has been watching him long enough to notice his discomfort. The camera shifts slightly to a side profile, focusing on her contemplative mood. Her gaze remains fixed on the man. A thought bubble appears, revealing her hesitation. Should I go and help him? She is weighing the pros and cons of intervening in his current situation, sensing an opportunity but unsure of the timing. As she decides to approach, her internal monologue reveals a more strategic motive. The jagged, thought bubble-style frames suggest intense, private calculation. She thinks, even if he doesn't accept my proposal, it'd still be good to have him owe me, even just a little. This highlights that her help isn't purely out of kindness. She is playing a social or professional game of leverage. Suddenly, the scene shifts to a different character, a blonde woman with floral earrings who seems to be an onlooker or perhaps the person the man was originally with. The sound effect "stand" looms over the panel as the man reacts abruptly. The blonde woman looks up with a startled, wide-eyed expression, sweat beads forming on her face as she is caught off guard by the sudden movement or the intrusion of the auburn-haired woman. The tense atmosphere is punctured by a sharp, loud exclamation. From across the space, someone shouts in a mix of confusion and indignation, "Hey, where are you going?" The bold, jagged lettering of the speech bubble emphasizes the suddenness of the interruption, drawing the attention of everyone in the immediate vicinity. Caught in the middle of the growing drama, the woman with the long auburn hair brushes a hand through her locks with a subtle rustle. Her profile shows a hint of frustration or perhaps a realization that her calculated plan is hitting a messy snag. She remains composed, but the way she touches her hair suggests she is recalibrating her next move amidst the chaos. The scene becomes a blur of motion as people shift within the dimly lit lounge. The auburn-haired woman stands tall in her white blouse and high-waisted black skirt, her figure sharp against the out-of-focus guests around her. The focus pans past a smiling man in the foreground, highlighting the disconnect between the casual social setting and the high-stakes interaction unfolding between the main players. The perspective shifts to a woman in a pink top who is leaning in close to the tall man, her face wearing a persistent, blushing smile. She seems oblivious to his discomfort, pushing her luck by saying, "Oh, come on, just give me your number." Her playful but pushy demeanor makes it clear why the man looked so troubled earlier in the evening.
Finally, the man draws a hard line. As the woman in pink continues to hold onto his arm, trying to keep him from leaving, he delivers a cold, clear rebuttal. The speech bubble is centered and blunt as he states simply, "I have a girlfriend." This definitive statement acts as a shield, intended to end the unwanted pursuit once and for all. The tension begins with a sharp, accusatory cry. A hand is thrust forward, fingers splayed as if to present evidence of a betrayal. The speech bubble cuts through the air with a stinging realization. "Liar! You're not even wearing a ring." The absence of the ring serves as a smoking gun, stripping away a layer of deception in their heated confrontation. In response to the outburst, the man, presumably the one accused, reacts not with guilt, but with a deep, frustrated frown. His brow furrows and his gaze turns downward, his expression etched with irritation. He looks like a man who has reached the limit of his patience, weary of the drama unfolding around him in the dimly lit, upscale lounge. The man attempts to shut down the conversation entirely. A speech bubble emanating from his chest states firmly, "That has nothing to do with you." But before he can finish his dismissal, he is interrupted by a heavy, deliberate step. A new presence enters the fray, calling out his name with chilling familiarity. "Yenyak!" Yenyak turns his head sharply, his eyes narrowing as he looks over his shoulder. Behind him stands a woman, her long, wavy hair cascading down her back. The atmosphere shifts instantly. The step sound effect emphasizes the weight of her arrival. The dynamic of the room changes from a two-way argument into a much more complicated three-way encounter. Finally, the newcomer is revealed in full. She is a striking woman with flowing reddish-brown hair and elegant diamond earrings that shimmer under the bar's crystalline lights. She wears a confident, knowing smirk, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear as she gazes at Yenyak. With an air of playful yet piercing superiority, she delivers the final line. "Took you long enough." Her arrival suggests that the real game has only just begun. As the tension peaks, a hand clad in a soft pink sleeve reaches out, gripping Yanyak's arm with a mix of desperation and urgency. This physical contact serves as a silent plea for attention, grounding him in the midst of the escalating confrontation. The woman with the reddish-brown hair doesn't hesitate to assert her presence. She moves in close, performing a deliberate lean against Yanyak. Her proximity is a bold statement of intimacy designed to mark her territory and unsettlingly close the distance between them. Yanyak's expression remains sharp and guarded, his eyes fixed forward as he feels her weight against him. From her vantage point, close to his side, the woman directs a piercing question toward the person in pink. Her voice, though likely smooth, carries an edge as she asks, "Who were you talking to?" It is a dismissal disguised as a question, intended to strip the other person of their relevance in Yanyak's life. The newcomer continues her verbal offensive, her eyes narrowing with a faint, mocking smile. She looks back at the woman in pink and asks with an air of cold curiosity, "An acquaintance?" By using such a distant, formal term, she attempts to diminish the significance of the previous argument, reducing a heated emotional moment to a mere passing encounter with a stranger. The scene culminates in a tableau of immense social pressure. The woman in the pink top stands small before the towering figures of Yanyak and his companion. The sound effect, hesitate, hangs in the air as she remains paralyzed, trapped between her desire to speak and the overwhelming, unified front presented by the two people before her. The gap between them feels like an unbridgeable chasm in the dimly lit lounge. The scene begins with a close-up of a man's face, partially shadowed but radiating a sense of calculated confidence. A sharp, knowing smirk plays on his lips as he gazes at something, or someone, just out of frame. The internal monologue, talk about impeccable timing, suggests that he has arrived at the perfect moment to disrupt a situation or seize an opportunity, setting a tone of mysterious intent.
The perspective shifts to a woman in a pink dress, standing in what appears to be a sophisticated bar or lounge. Her face is flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and agitation. She looks toward an unseen person and flatly denies any connection, her speech bubble reading, "No, I don't know her." Her defensive posture and the "what?" trailing off in the background hint at a brewing confrontation or a social trap she is trying to escape. The dialogue continues over a shimmering, soft focus background, bridging the gap between the characters. A voice asks, "Did your meeting go well?" To which the response comes with a smooth, practiced courtesy, "Yes, sorry I'm late." This exchange marks the official entry of the man into the immediate circle of the two women, layering a veneer of professionalism over the underlying tension. The man fully enters the frame, towering slightly over the woman in white and the woman in pink. He maintains his charming, enigmatic smile, while the woman in pink watches them, her face turning a deep shade of crimson as the word blush hangs in the air. The atmosphere is thick with unspoken history. His presence alone is enough to completely unsettle the woman in the center, making her the focus of a silent, high-stakes social drama. The final panel focuses on a subtle but significant physical action. The man reaches out, his hand firmly but gently grasping the strap of the woman's bag, or perhaps her arm. This gesture is possessive and authoritative, signaling to the other woman that he is taking charge of the situation. It effectively ends the argument and establishes his dominance in the room, leaving the woman in pink stunned as he leads the other away. The man maintains his composed and striking appearance, a soft yet enigmatic smile gracing his lips. His eyes, sharp and full of hidden meaning, remain fixed on the person in front of him. There is an air of quiet triumph in his expression, as if everything is proceeding exactly according to his plan, further cementing his dominant role in this social encounter. The tension in the room shifts from confrontation to an intimate yet public invitation. Amidst the sound of footsteps, marked by a prominent clump, a speech bubble appears with a direct question. "Shall we head to your place today, So Young?" In the background, the woman in the pink dress is left speechless, her face still flushed with a mix of shock and embarrassment as she watches the scene unfold from the sidelines. With his proposition made, the man moves closer, his presence looming large and protective. He is seen carrying a blue bag, which adds a touch of domesticity to his otherwise sharp appearance. He stands beside So Young, the sound of their movement, clump, echoing through the bar. His posture is assertive, effectively creating a barrier between So Young and anyone else in the room. So Young looks up at him with a knowing, almost playful smile of her own. She doesn't hesitate for a second, her response being a simple, definitive, "Sure." The clump of her heels indicates she is already turning to leave with him, leaving the bar's chaotic energy behind for something more private. The chemistry between them is palpable, leaving no room for further argument from outsiders. As they begin to walk away, the man places a firm guiding hand on So Young's shoulder. So Young casts a final lingering glance back over her shoulder. Whether it is a look of victory or a silent goodbye to the woman in pink, the gesture signifies that the encounter is officially over. They move as a unit, retreating into the shimmering lights of the evening and leaving the tension of the bar far behind them. The scene opens in the vibrant, shimmering atmosphere of a high-end lounge. Amidst the clinking of crystal wine glasses hanging from the rack and the glow of premium bottles, a hand thrusts a smartphone upward. With an energetic shake, the person signals a clear intent to stay connected, their voice cutting through the ambient noise with a spirited exclamation, "Call me!" As the evening continues, we see the face of the woman behind the phone. She's radiant, with wavy blonde hair and a cheerful expression that lights up the room. Her cheeks are dusted with a slight flush, perhaps from the excitement of the night or the wine in the background. Wearing elegant floral earrings and a stylish patterned dress, she waves goodbye with a genuine, hopeful smile, clearly charmed by the company she just kept. The perspective shifts abruptly from the warmth of the bar to the quiet, cool air of the outdoors. High above the silhouettes of lush garden trees, a massive full moon hangs in a deep indigo sky. The celestial glow is so bright it illuminates the edges of the clouds, while scattered stars twinkle around it. Below, the rhythmic sound of footsteps, clump, clump, breaks the midnight silence, echoing through the empty park. Under the watchful eye of the moon, a man and a woman walk side by side along a winding stone path. The garden is bathed in a moody, bluish twilight. The man, dressed in a sharp black suit, leads the way with a stoic demeanor. Beside him, the woman with long, wavy mauve hair follows closely. Their body language suggests a heavy atmosphere, contrasting sharply with the lively energy of the bar they presumably just left. The camera zooms in on the woman with mauve hair, capturing a moment of sudden realization or distress. A small sweat drop graces her temple as she winces, her lips parted in a soft, breathless gasp. Ah! Something has caught her attention or sparked a troubling thought, causing her to falter as she walks. The cool, glittering light of the park emphasizes the tension written across her face. The steady rhythm of their walk is abruptly broken as the man reaches out, his hand firmly encircling the woman's slender wrist. The motion is swift and unexpected, illustrated by the sharp action lines between them. He halts her mid-step, his grip acting as a silent command to stop and face the mounting tension between them. Realizing the suddenness of his actions, the man immediately softens his posture and begins to pull his hand away. A look of slight concern or regret crosses his face as he mutters, "Oh, I'm sorry." The woman, still startled, looks at him with wide, uncertain eyes, her own hand frozen in the air as she processes the sudden physical contact under the dim park lights. Despite releasing his firm hold, the man's fingers linger for a moment near her sleeve as he notices a faint red mark left on her skin. His voice drops to a more gentle, questioning tone as he asks, "Were you uncomfortable?" The close-up shot emphasizes the sensitivity of the moment and his sudden awareness of her reaction to his presence. The woman gazes down at her wrist, the warmth of his touch still seemingly present in the cool night air. She is momentarily lost for words, her only response being a soft, whispered, "Ah." The sparkling, textured background reflects the internal flutter of emotions, a mixture of confusion and heightened awareness as the silence stretches between them. Regaining her composure, the woman shifts her gaze upward, her eyes searching his face with a mixture of boldness and vulnerability. A small glance indicates her hesitation before she finally breaks the silence with a direct question. After a brief, unsure, she gathers her courage and asks pointedly, "Don't you have something you want to say to me?" The moment hangs heavy with the weight of unspoken words and a truth waiting to be revealed.